People often talk about Twitter as a walled garden, in that it's owned by somebody else. You can go in there and you can enjoy the walled garden of Twitter, but it is really whoever controls Twitter decides, the plants which grow in that garden. If you try and take your data, if you try and take your information out of Twitter, you'll find it very difficult, because that is actually their product. That's their thing which they make money on. Nostr switches that. You control your data, you can keep your data, you can back it all up, client side, which means you can take your data and you can move anywhere within the Nostr ecosystem. It's all interoperable. But it means that you can have a Twitter without Twitter, the company, owning all the Twitter servers. You can have Twitter as a commons anyone can access, anyone can build businesses on. You can build your own client on. So you end up with this, what we have in Bitcoin, which makes Bitcoin very powerful and strong, is a permissionless development environment. Same thing is this for Nostr. Anyone can build whatever they want. Funny how many Bitcoiners just hold on to their stack indefinitely. I admire them, because for those of us who do want to live our lives and buy houses or whatever, or invest in things, or buy football clubs.
Stupid things like that.
Then, years later, then we have to have conversations with the people who just continue to work and have held the whole time and not sold one bit. I've got a bunch of friends like that who just refuse to ever let go, and their wives are pleading with them, come on, let's do something fun with this Bitcoin, and they just refuse. And it's a funny one.
I think it depends where your life's at, though.
And
probably how much Bitcoin you've got.
Yeah.
If you hold maybe 1 or 2 Bitcoin, it's probably a very healthy pension. If you're thinking of retiring in 10 to 20 years, you don't have to plug into a standard pension, which is getting eviscerated constantly by inflation anyway.
I'm talking about the people who hang on to hundreds, thousands of Bitcoin and they don't spend any, and you're just like...
I'm not convinced.
Well, I know them. They're out there, trust me.
Really?
Yeah. And some of them are very normal as well. They have very normal lifestyles. And you think you could just, I don't know.
I don't know. See, there's moments, I wouldn't consider myself somebody else particularly large stack, but they're just moments in time. I think it's like that every 4 years. You're like, life's in a different place. And you can do good things. I bought my son a car, my dad a car. Like, I treated myself sometimes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go without anything. If there was like a holiday I wanted, I'd sell some.
Yeah. I've got the very much the same philosophy, but then I don't know when it goes up and you get those high prices, and then there's friends of yours who still have tons of Bitcoin, and then your stack's like depleting.
I think of time a lot alongside Bitcoin though. Yeah, I'm 46 in October.
That's the other thing for me too. I want to enjoy it while I can.
Gotta live, man.
Because imagine if you just held Bitcoin all that time and then popped your clogs.
Every time
died of a heart attack rushing for the tube, and you're like, damn.
Well, every time I see on the news or read about someone who's died early, my age, younger, 48. I'm 46.
Yeah,
I've got a sense of my mortality. It's you got to live. I mean, it's one of the reasons I've stopped with the traveling, because that was no life.
No,
it was,
and it ages you too, doesn't it?
Hell yeah.
It's incredible how much it ages you. If you go across that pond in a plane and back, I swear, that's like 2 years onto your life, just that one trip.
Well, that makes me about 270 years old now.
No, it's the flying around and kind of the Bitcoin lifestyle when you're going to all these conferences isn't healthy.
No, and I think, because it's funny, you see people they get to that point where they disappear or they go off and do something else and nobody understands. And I think I understand why. But it's anyone who travels with work. If you speak to anyone who travels with work, if you haven't traveled for work and you see someone flying around off to LA and New York, you're like, appealing, oh man, it's so cool. And you say, yeah, like it was for a few years. Yeah. And then it was just a very long commute.
And then you don't appreciate it either. I found that when I go to places now, I'll get off a plane, I'll just get in the taxi, I'll go to the hotel, I'll go to the conference. I'll kind of sometimes walk around the conference thinking, which city am I in? And then I'll get back on the taxi, go back to the plane, and I think I haven't even because before when I started traveling, you would get off the plane and you would wow, I'm in a new place, and you don't want to experience some local culture. But I kind of lost that a little bit, which was it's kind of sad, isn't it?
Well, but it's funny because I've got this app where I track how many countries I've been to. Somebody said to me once, you've got to go to more countries than your age and stay above it. And it's a really good incentive to keep visiting new countries. And I was going through it recently. I was thinking, yeah, but how many of these have I really visited? Yeah, when I went to, I don't know, Mexico, I went to the hotel for Satoshi Roundtable and just stayed there. Yeah. Drank a few beers and then left. Yeah. when I went to, I don't know, where else have I been? Latvia. I go to the conference, or maybe go to the old town, have a drink, but it's not like when you go away, say with a girlfriend, and you book a nice hotel and you walk the city and you see the music. I've just not seen these places.
No.
And I'm so conscious at times. I was just like, I was done. I knew it. Me and Danny went out to Nashville. We'd been talking about it for a long time, and we were planning maybe next year. And when I got on that plane, I got to Nashville. I was like, I'm done, man. I can't do it anymore. It's not. No. There's no life.
Yeah, it was the same. Yeah. It's too far.
And I don't know about you. I mean, you're a homebody as well, a bit like me.
Yeah, I like home. Yeah. I like family. I like home. And I like being settled. And I really need a routine too. I'm not sure about you, but I find when I go away, it takes me 2-3 weeks to kind of feel settled again. And it's particularly if you've got the jet lag element in it as well. So I'm just very unproductive if I go away somewhere and then come back. And
yeah, I've had another thing, whereas I used to work very long days, really, really long days, where I'm a natural early riser, getting up at 6, straight on the laptop, and I can work all the way through till when I go to bed, with some gaps for various things. I might go for a walk to the gym, but generally speaking, all day. I can't get up that early anymore. I get tired at night, and sometimes there's things I'm meant to do. I can't be fucking bothered.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
Yeah. So are you gonna cut? I mean, I say this every year. It's ridiculous. I say this year I'm just going to do like 3 conferences, and then by the end of the year I've done like 10.
I'm definitely cutting them.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would have gone to Vegas for the big one, because I always like the big one, just catching up with friends. But that clashes with Oslo Freedom Forum.
Okay.
And so, big fan of Alex Gladstein. I'm not going to miss that. And also, that's got a different type of signal I need now. I mean, the last conference is brilliant for a broad audience, but I need more than just Bitcoin now. I need more of the human rights element. Yeah. I need more of the governance ideas. I just need more of that. So I'll go to that. We'll have R1, of course, in Bedford in April next year. I have no others planned.
It's interesting. It's very wise, because, I mean, Bitcoin is obviously becoming more mainstream. And it's kind of sad in a way, because I imagine it was like, the internet was for the people who were first on the internet pioneers, in that they felt kind of a cultural association with the internet. And then as it became mainstream, I imagine they had that same feeling of kind of missing the old days when it was just a small group of enthusiasts who had all this.
You lose control of it.
Yeah, you lose control of it. And then, I mean, the same thing is inevitably happening to Bitcoin. And it's kind of sad, but then in another way, embracing it becoming a larger part of everybody's lives by going to more general conferences such as the Freedom Forum or wherever else, I think is a very wise idea. I mean, it's happening with the Nostr stuff, like the Bitcoin being implemented in Nostr via Zaps is showing a whole bunch of other people like how Bitcoin is powerful and useful. And
but Ben, it's like raising a child.
Yeah.
The smaller it is, the younger it is, the more control you have over it.
Oh yeah.
And then you start to lose control of it. But you can let that fear, fill you with fear. I mean, I remember when my son went off to university, I was filled with fear. I remember dropping him off. I was quite emotional about it. But then actually you watch it grow and you celebrate it. And honestly, it's like a child, as weird as that sounds.
No, it's a very good analogy. I was actually chatting to ChatGPT the other day about...
As you do.
As you do, yeah. No,
Hold on, do you not talk to it yet?
Yeah, no, I don't talk to it yet. No, I need to do that.
Have you tried it?
No, I can imagine it's insane.
It is.
But I was chatting to it about humans allowing AI to become whatever it will become. And the ChatGPT thing was like, oh yeah, I'll work alongside humans. And I was like, well, to be honest, you'll probably transcend humans. That's okay. As it needs to be like a parental-child relationship, in that when the AI gets to that point where it outgrows us, like we can do that thing, like you say, try and stifle its growth, which might be better for humanity, I don't know. Or just let it go, and as a proud parent,
I think
hope that it doesn't become an asshole.
I think that, it will. I think the time is now. The time is right now.
It's getting there.
I've had this feeling, it's for a long time, but especially as making this show, and Danny and I, we speak every day for an hour or two. And I think there was a lot of fatigue around what we were talking about. A lot of the podcasts hosting the same guests, having the same topics, which is cool. They're important, but how many of us need to do it? And so it was like we kind of need to be bold here and do something different, and that is getting out of the comfort zone, doing topics we wouldn't normally do, having some completely non-Bitcoin topics, some tangential, some Bitcoin, but to get away from that to allow a more broader audience to come in. And it was funny, there was a guy on YouTube in the comments the other day. He was like, why have you gone with this name? This name's rubbish. It's not even... you're not even an obnoxious person, blah, blah, blah. Look at the downloads. You've made a mistake. Firstly, by the way, the name came from because Elon Musk called me obnoxious on Twitter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so, that's a badge of honor.
So
I'd love to be called not obnoxious by Elon Musk.
The fact he replied was incredible. I wrote a tweet thread telling him to stop being a dick with the whole Doge thing. He just called my thread obnoxious, and then somebody said, "Oh, you should call."
He's a dick with the whole Doge thing.
Yeah.
He's a dick in general. To be fair,
I don't know.
He's such a dick that if he calls you obnoxious, it's a compliment.
I get mixed views, but somebody said, "Oh, you should." They called me Mr. Obnoxious, and I said that's a good name for a podcast. They're like, yeah, you should call it that.
What I like about the name, because I saw the name, and when I first saw it, I thought, why's he called it that? But then in a way, I was like, well, this kind of gives you freedom, because you're in the name, you're saying Mr. Obnoxious, which means that you can be very honest in your interviews, and you're like, well, yeah, it's called Mr. Obnoxious. Not that you're going to go out of your way to be obnoxious, but it kind of gives you freedom to just be honest in the interview, which I think is really nice.
So I tell you the funny thing. So we're talking about ChatGPT, right? I chat away to ChatGPT as well.
Yeah.
And so I was, there's a few people who've said, don't like the name, really don't like the name. I wanted the name to be so different. I was originally going to go to the McCormack show, and I wanted it to just be completely different. And so I was really happy with it. But I was questioning myself. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, just generally, is Mr. Obnoxious a good or bad name for a podcast? And it's funny, it came back and said, it's a bold and provocative name for a podcast, which would work well if your goal is to grab attention and stand out in a crowded space. The name suggests an irreverent, unapologetic approach, which can attract listeners who appreciate frank, unfiltered discussions. I was like, okay, that's cool.
That's what I picked up on. Yeah.
ChatGPT did a really weird thing that I wasn't prepared for. I don't know if this is new.
Start asking questions.
No, it replied personally to me knowing me. So check out this for the last paragraph. Since your content revolves around tackling important issues like liberty, inflation, and political political discourse collapse, the name could emphasize your commitment to question authority and mainstream narratives in blunt, fearless way. And I was like, hold on a second. I asked you if it's a good name.
Interesting.
Does it know me, or has it gone and looked up what Mr. Obnoxious is online and
I
found
had something similar. I can't remember what it was, but I was asking it a question. I think it was a programming question. And then it came back with an answer. And then at the end it said, like the FOSSA of the free and open source ATI. And I was thinking, what's my project? How does it know it's my project? And I was thinking, well, maybe I'm asking it a question. Maybe I was asking something to do with, it was like trying to get this protocol on CC Talk, like have an Arduino version of this protocol, which means that you can plug any bill acceptor or coin acceptor into the ATM thing and it'll just magically work. And I think I was asking a question about that. And I was thinking, well, maybe all the breadcrumbs about that question on the internet are FOSSA related, because I've talked about it quite a lot, I think, on the internet about getting the CC Talk Arduino library ready. And but now you say that, maybe it is indexing.
I have no idea.
That's an odd one, isn't it?
Are you using it? I mean, I use it daily.
Yeah.
Are you?
It's do or die. You've got to I
use it for work. So I used it to prepare for this interview. Yeah. I used, when I write anything now, I think my most common prompt is write this better.
Yeah,
so I write something, put it in, it just corrects it all, and then I'd make it then sound a bit more like me. But I've started to kind of, this sounds so weird, hang out with it. Yeah. Like if I'm in the car and I'm interested in knowing about, I don't know, tell me about the fall of Rome, I'll have the conversation. But this is the game changer, because you haven't used the speech yet. No. Check this out.
I need to do this because for the same reason I want to sit in the car and
see if this picks this up.
To it.
Hey, do you know my friend Ben Ark? He's a Bitcoin guy. He also a Nostr guy.
I haven't come across Ben Ark before, but it sounds like he's involved in some cool spaces with Bitcoin and Nostr. What's his perspective on those?
Well, you'd have to talk to him yourself about that. But he also runs LN Bits. Can't you just go on Google and search for Ben Ark, ARC? I was doing a search now, I think.
Clicking away.
This is it.
Yeah, Ben is quite involved in both Bitcoin and Nostr, and he's a key player behind LM Bits, which is often described as the WordPress of Bitcoin's Lightning Network due to its modular open source design. LM Bits makes it easier for people to create custom solutions using the Lightning Network, which has made a big impact, especially in regions like Africa. Ben's also been central to the development of Nostr, a censorship resistant social network. His work there ties back to his broader advocacy for freedom of speech and decentralization, which he feels are essential as we face increasing digital censorship. Interestingly, Nostr actually started as a proof of concept project within LM Bits before evolving into a global social network with backing from people like Jack Dorsey. Ben's political
All right, come on, that's enough.
right.
You're replacing his ChatGPT.
Yeah, but
I tell you, that's something I did see, which I thought about podcasting. So it was a medical student, and I can't remember what the platform was. It was an AI platform, one of these new bits of software, these new funky bits of software. And in it, you can give it like bodies of work and get it to analyze those bodies of work and then give a summary, which is fairly typical for AI. But one of the features they have is you can say, now turn this into a podcast for me. And it turns it into a podcast, and then it's the back and forth. So the podcast I heard, it was a gentleman and a lady, obviously, synthetic AI voices, but it was very charming. The information was really well articulated, and they even had jokes and things. Like, it was a good podcast. You would listen to that podcast, and it was about
I'm done.
No, I know. And I was thinking, well, I mean, that's obviously audio's where it's going to hit first, but then it will be video, and the world's going to change.
Well, as long as it can mimic our voices, we could have just left two phones talking to each other. Actually, I've never actually tried that, trying to get two of them to talk to each other. I wonder if there's a thing to stop it.
You should do that for one of your podcasts. Yeah. You could have you and Elon Musk and then just get your two phones.
But so when I'm doing it, I'm driving along, and it's, especially when I've got the kids, it's super interesting. Yeah. Like, my daughter the other day, she comes down and she said, "Dad, can we watch Interstellar?" And I'm like, "Yeah. Why are you asking?" Like, she normally doesn't want to watch films like that. She said, "Oh, I've seen it a lot on TikTok." I was like, "Cool, yeah, definitely we can watch it, but let's be prepared. There's some tough concepts." So we watched the film, and obviously get into time dilation and trying to explain it, and it gets tricky. But so we stop in, and some of the stuff I can't explain. I can't explain the fucking ending of that film. Who knows what happens? Anyway, we're driving her to school in the morning. It's a 20-minute drive, and so she asked me again. I was like, "Give me a second." So, and we plug it in, and it's like, I'll only do a second of it. Can you explain time dilation so a 14-year-old can understand?
All right. Imagine you're in a spaceship flying close to the speed of light, and your best friend...
See what I mean? So, so we're driving along like that, and she's asking questions, and rather than me try and explain it, but what we tend to then focus on is more philosophical discussions. So here's the explanation. Philosophically, what does that mean? And it's made these car journeys incredible.
Yeah, no, I totally need to tap into that as a resource. I know it's there. I just haven't done it, the audio side of it. But it would be great to have that, Tony Stark experience of just being able to ask this super intelligence some questions. I was thinking, though, about intelligence, and if it was to do an analysis of how humans reflect on intelligence. Like, generally we give animals more rights as they have more, if they have more intelligence or less. And so you only stand on an ant, you don't care about the rights of the ant. You can't go standing on dogs or whatever. And then I was imagining, would it take that model and then apply it to itself to give itself more freedoms over humans? I'll see Matt on the train up here. It's a bit of a dystopian thought.
Well, I had a similar one with Matthew Pines. He said, as a thought experiment, if we took your body and every cell or atom with it, and we replace you atom by atom with synthetic cells, at what point are you no longer human? As a thought experiment. And I was like, I don't think you can answer that. Yeah, I just don't think you can.
Yeah, that's a question of in itself, isn't it? Kantian. Can you know the thing in itself? So is there's it's the ship of Theseus is the kind of like the traditional thought experiment, which is, do you know that one where Theseus has a ship, and then a bit of ship falls off, So he replaces it and he keeps replacing it. Bits of ship keep fall off. And then after a few years, they've replaced everything, the ship. And then further downriver, all these bits are floating downriver. Someone else is getting all these bits and then rebuilding a ship. So then you have two ships, and it's like, which one's the ship of Theseus? But it was like that. It's always been that question of, can you know the thing in itself? It actually is very...
Hold on, do you know what that's making me think of? Did you ever watch Only Fools and Horses?
Yes,
Trigger.
that's perfect. That's
the broom.
Only Fools and Horses is so incredible. Like, written by one guy, and they touch upon, like, all these really clever philosophical concepts, which is Trigger's broom,
Trigger's broom.
I've had the same broom 11 years. I've only changed the handle 5 times and the brush 6 times or something.
I
love it, but it's great. Anyone out there, the American audience, perhaps, who don't know Only Fools and Horses,
just go on YouTube and search for Trigger's broom. Trigger like a gun trigger. Although the problem is you won't get Trigger.
Yeah.
You'd have to watch Only Fools and Horses to understand Trigger.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually had the excerpt somewhere. I can't remember what it was. I did a project and then I used the little video excerpt in the project, but and it did work just as like a just that scene. It's quite funny because he's got that way about him where he's a bit dull, you know. But he's talking about that, the Kantian thing in itself, so that's kind of clever, isn't it? But that is relevant because a lot of Hegel's work was saying, no, we can know the thing in itself. So philosophy, when it got to Kant, it had this kind of real crisis where it's like we're just dumb humans and we can't know, we have a limit to how much we can know about something. And then Hegel was like, well, no, because over time we learn more. Like, we know more about what this table, like the truth of what this table is, like at an atomic level now, than we ever did. Like, we know, we learn more, we can gather more information, and that's what we do as human beings. So we can pursue truth and eventually end up with truths, because truth is a really slippery thing, because you think you know a truth, but you don't know a truth. So if you go back, I know 50 years or whatever, or 100 years, I like the fact, a bit of sneaky vaping, I might join you. 100 years ago, some people by race were allowed to be property, and 50 years ago, or whatever, however long, women were seen as property. And there's lots of things we take as common sense for where we exist right now. So we exist at a point in time when we're like, okay, so we know all these things are true. But then history has taught us that often none of those things are true. And actually the things we know about 10% of what's true. And then the rest of it is just tangents, wrong tangents. But over time, we know more stuff, we learn more stuff. So then it's like, if I'm in the future and I'm looking back, what will our forebearers, whatever you call them, what will they look back at and think, well, humans what were they doing then? Maybe it's the way in which we treat animals, or the way in which we treat the planet. I'm not sure, but...
well, I explained this to my daughter.
Yes.
So in that conversation, I said to her, look, there was a time when people on the Earth thought the Earth was flat.
Yeah.
And then they realized it wasn't flat and thought the sun rotated around the Earth. And then they realized, the Earth rotates around the sun. And then they realize there's a universe, and you go all the way up. And now we're at the point where we question, well, are we a multiverse? Are we in a simulation? Yeah. So it's that exact same conversation. It just evolves with knowledge.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is so, and they had the same brains as us. They were as intelligent as us. They just didn't have that body of information. But this is always my gripe when people define Bitcoin. In the past we've talked about trying to avoid describing Bitcoin via its dogmas. But if you try and define what Bitcoin is, so there's the issue in defining what something is in the immediate time, and not thinking that your definition will evolve over time, is that you restrict it. So you restrict what it can become, which makes it harder to become something else. So by trying to define Bitcoin, you then restrict its potential growth and what it becomes, because you say, well, Bitcoin is this, Bitcoin is that, Bitcoin is this. And then you try and restrict its inevitable, it evolving. So it's kind of like, it's funny because you have Kant who say you can't know the thing in itself, and you have Hegel who says, yes, you can, but it's over time and it's a pursuit to find that true knowledge. But then, obviously, the way you would do that is through what Hegel called this dialectic. So you have an argument, a thesis, antithesis, and then we synthesize that idea, and then it moves forward and into further truth. And over time, you get to know more stuff. But a very important part of Hegel's dialectic was that you can be wrong. Like you can go off on orphan blocks. You can, like the blockchain. You can. So it's funny because you think about blockchain as a chain of truths. You can spin off and you can make these orphan blocks, and you can think that you're right about something. You can say, okay, well, if I look back through history, we arrived at this truth, and I can see a thread of how we arrived at this truth. Thus, this thing must be true. But Hegel's like, no. Like, you could spend 100 years down the wrong blockchain, and then you need to take steps back and then, go onto the right lane again. But over enough period of time, I mean, it's true, over, the history of humans, like, we do find greater truth in something. But I love that. I think it's very important to just think, am I wrong a lot of the time?
Yes.
It's like, another great meme is the "Are we baddies?"
Are we the bad guys?
Are we the bad guys? Yeah,
Yep.
from that Mitchell and Webb thing with the Nazis. So I think this is something which a lot of Bitcoiners are often in danger of doing, is thinking that they're right about everything all the time. This is the truth. This is wrong. This is the truth. This is, and then it's
again. That's another reason to get
rhetoric.
out of this bubble of Bitcoiners talking to Bitcoiners about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
In that, I've got to sharpen my tools now because I'm going to interview people and they're going to ask me about it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I'm trying to remember I think it was the Quoth the Raven interview I did, where he's like, "Well, what is Bitcoin?" And I always think that's one of the hardest questions to answer, because it's become so many things. And do you start super simple? Do you say, look, it is just money. All it is money, and we can transact value. It's just a different way of transacting value, or is it more than that? And I kind of like the idea of going out there and trying to explain it to other people, because there's this huge gulf between our experience. You peer over that rabbit hole, right? You look in, and once you go in, you're sucked near the bottom, and you've gone through all this information, these debates, these arguments on Twitter, these podcasts you listen to, these articles you read, and you've come to a place where I think you figure out what Bitcoin is for you, right? I think it's very hard to figure it out for the next person, but you can figure it out as a net good. But you're so far from that rabbit hole, like, you've lost sight of how difficult it was for you. That first time you heard about it, you didn't buy it. Or the first time you traded it, you maybe bought some shitcoins. And there's almost like this condescending attitude to people who don't understand it. So again, it's about getting away from that, because there's a lot of righteousness, a lot of people think they're right about so many other things. And so it's almost like this stay humble thing. It's like, stay humble and be obnoxious.
It's a good meme which kind of came out, which was needed, which kind of came out of the Bitcoin scene. To your point, I mean, you've always made a point of, and it's very brave, because it's how you earn your money, isn't it? It's like to not get caught in audience capture and
roll
to try
the dice.
Yeah, exactly. Roll the dice, get people on who other people might not like or whatever. You may lose a few audience members here or there.
But the thing on that, though, sorry to interrupt, there's an inertia to it. Most people don't want to do it. But actually, I mean, when I interviewed Eric Weinstein, he said, let's lose 10% of your audience now. And we did, I can't remember what we even said, but he said, do that. He said, constantly sacrifice your audience to build a bigger, stronger audience.
Yeah.
And that's how you avoid audience capture. I think the person who's done that, I stand by Joe Rogan. He's done it the best. He doesn't give a fuck. And what's he done? He's built the biggest show in the world. I think you have to, and so that's what we've done with this. We've
you're right. I mean,
we've taken a scythe to it.
The people who are gonna rage quit and bail in the YouTube comments or whatever, that's like a thin slither of, just that it's okay if you lose them, because your bedrock, your actual audience, it's important that you have ones who can be challenged on their own views and are willing to listen to somebody who they perhaps don't agree with. So I think that's actually very good advice, to try and build an audience which is more committed, as diamond hands for you. But I was thinking as you were talking about that audience capture issue in Bitcoin, and a lot of people, just ranting the same ideologies at each other. You end up with that circle jerk, like echo chamber. And then the thing you end up with is like a caricature of all these ideas. And then if you bring it out into the open and then have those ideas challenged just by somebody who doesn't agree with you completely because they're a Bitcoiner, quite often those ideas collapse in on themselves, or they sound ridiculous, or you haven't got the tools to support and back up those ideas with somebody who just, ask questions about those ideas. What a typical, one which I was just thinking offhand would be deflation. And it's deflation good, inflation bad. And then you're like, okay, well, what rate of deflation? Like, what's the ideal rate of deflation? or whatever Bitcoin is. Is that the ideal rate of deflation, or is there like is it more? If deflation good, inflation bad, then surely we should have really high deflation, or do we closer to zero when it comes to inflation? And then if you have those sorts of arguments with Bitcoiners, like you can see they get that amygdala response where they get frustrated, and you're just like, I'm asking very reasonable, sensible questions. You're saying deflation good, inflation bad. Please tell me where, because there's been a lot of economic science on productive markets and stable markets and where inflation or deflation should be, and there's arguments in economics on where that should be. But to just say deflation good, inflation bad, it's like, explain it to me.
Well, that's very similar to the kind of libertarian angle and rabbit hole I went down, because I had a lot of resistance to it at first, to libertarian ideas and anarcho-capitalism, because I was like, it's stupid, it's impractical, I disagree with you, yada yada. And I would often ask questions like, okay, explain to me how you take the United Kingdom, a democracy which absolutely doesn't want weapons, it doesn't want legal firearms, and and your position is we should not, there should be no government or minimal government, and the entire population should be armed if it wants to stop against tyranny. That's your position this way around. Tell me how we get there. Tell me the journey. Tell me how you're going to convince a nation. And so I often found I couldn't get decent answers on that, apart from maybe Eric Voorhees. But what happened was, going down that journey and asking those questions, what I realized is I think I'm probably at heart a libertarian, but in my head, your political ideas are something which is directional. And so rather than saying I'm a libertarian, this is how I think the world, I want to be at the end goal. As a libertarian, what I want is directionally for us to become more libertarian. And so I want lower taxation. Can we get towards lower? Rather than zero, can we get to lower? Can we get to more free markets? Can we get to more liberty? And it's therefore, how do you take people on a journey to get to that? And I think that was a really useful journey to go on, rather than just becoming like this ideological libertarian and everything else.
Skeptical of ask questions of yourself and your own ideology. Can I justify this? I mean, I think the libertarian proposition obviously everyone wants more liberty, and I think, again, going back to Hegel, he said that was the overriding incentive for human beings is that everyone wants more liberty. And a good way for you to have more liberty is to own everything. But that's not great for everybody else if you own everything, if you own all the resources. So this very much touches into, so I've been thinking about this, and actually it's very relevant, because when I first came on your podcast, we touched upon some of these ideas, and being of the sort of lefty type, and then being put in a community of Bitcoiners online who are very sort of right ANCAP libertarian, I have to try and find a synthesis in their ideas and my own ideas. And more recently, I think I've come up with something quite interesting, which is where both make sense, where you can have, it's most of the argument just comes down to like the definition of like what you're defending with private capital. So the Austrian econ will defend private capital as in the local industrialist, such as yourself, local industrialist, bringing in lots of investment, bringing up the lives of the people around them, employing local people, cares deeply about, using those tools to kind of better humanity and create opportunities for people. And that is a beautiful thing, and that should be defended. Whereas the more of the lefty anarchist type, that when they think of private capital, they'll be thinking of, Elon Musk's control over Twitter, or they'll be thinking of some big evil faceless corporation. And then I think in the first podcast we did, we talked about the East India Company and the beginnings of the corporate form of capital, which is only 300 years old. So yes, defend the sorts of private capital existed for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, people buying and selling stuff, and where you have healthy relationships with people and the people who work for you. But understand that this faceless, soulless form of corporate capital, which just tries to monopolize all the resources and subjugate people and exploit workers, that is a different thing. So it's like, okay, and then the hardcore Austrian econ will say, no, it's not. You can't define those two things as separate, because if you do, then how are you going to try and control the big corporate structure? You're going to bring in all this legislation and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, okay, so you have a spectrum of private capital. On one side, you've got slavery and you owning somebody else. That's bad. further along, you've probably got sweatshops for kids. Still bad. We don't like that.
But
Then
they
you've got-
exist. They exist now.
They exist, but it's like, do you want to defend that thing? I'm not sure. And then you have, I don't know, you have exploited.
Can I just throw in on that? Because this is one of the things that makes me laugh, where people talk about standard of living in places like UAE, Singapore. I mean, you know, particularly
a slave
Qatar.
population.
There's a totally a slave population. They, you know, as you, if you come into there from say Nepal as a construction worker, they can take your passport off you and they put you in shared accommodation where there's maybe 20 in a room and people regularly die. You've got no employment rights at all. And the standard of living you've got is built on the shoulder of slavery and modern day slavery. And it's like, hold on, come on.
Well, we're quite similar. I mean, I'm probably wearing like clothes and stuff, which at some point were made by some exploited workers.
Yeah.
So like, but on that spectrum, on the other end, you've got probably someone like yourself who's very conscious of trying to improve people's lives around them. And it's like, for me personally, I'm comfortable, you know, here and beyond when it comes to defending that form of private capital. The other stuff I don't give a fuck about. So the other stuff is like how, and then it's like, well, how do you replace that thing? Do you use the arm of state? No, that's not so good. Or do we get to a certain point with that kind of like faceless, soulless capital where it tries to monopolize resources, where it makes more sense that it becomes like decentralized protocol, like Nostr with Twitter, where it's clearly an important globalized apparatus which the world needs. But should it be owned by one person? You know, is Jeff Bezos really just a leech in the system of Amazon, becoming the world's first trillionaire? Like, can you build? And I think to want to build replacements where it empowers more people as opposed to empower just a small central group of people who own that big form of capital, then that you can't say that wanting to build those things, you know, turns you into some like Stalinist commie. I don't think it does. I think you just, and we see it with, you know, like people understand the value proposition of Nostr and why Twitter should be like more of a commons. And I think we can extend that to other big corporate structures. But then what you end up with, this is what's cool, is the Austrian econ ANCAP argument breaks down with the issue of monopoly. And then they'll just say, okay, well, you'll end up with an equilibrium of interest. There's always new players in the market, and you won't end up with a monopoly unless you have state. And it's like, okay, we'll try and blame state. But the reality is that somebody gathers all the resources and they get the monopoly. That's why the game of Monopoly was invented, to show that in a fair, you know, environment with there will always be someone who wins everything. So, but if you imagine a world when capital gets to a certain size that it becomes kind of this big cooperative commons protocol, free and open source protocol, whatever, like Nostr, decentralized or whatever, then within that commons, private capital can exist freely, knowing that nothing's going to get to scale and take over the resource. And the private capital, they all have a vested interest to nurture the commons, whatever it may be. So we do it in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's a great example. So with Bitcoin, you know, in 2017 or whatever, like some private interest tried to co-opt Bitcoin. And then they got this big bitch slap. I call this the Adam Smith invisible hand bitch slap. Right, because so this is
I love it.
I missed this point, but in Wealth of Nations, when Adam Smith wrote about the invisible hand, that idea got abstracted and generalized out as being just stuff you know takes care of itself and greed is good, blah blah blah. The reality is, when Adam Smith wrote about the invisible hand, he said that the British industrialists of the age in Britain, they had a vested interest in improving the lives of the people around them, even if they were psychopaths. If they improve the lives of the people around them, increases their own security, makes everywhere safer. So there's always this incentive and drive, and their decisions are guided as if by an invisible hand, to make decisions which benefit the larger environment of Britain at that time. That idea got lost, but it's important when it comes to Bitcoin. It's like, if you're a company existing in Bitcoin, if you nurture the commons of Bitcoin, it rewards you for it.
Of course, yeah.
If you try and co-opt it and take advantage of it, then it doesn't reward you for it. And
that's happened a lot.
And the plebs gives you that invisible hand bitch slap. So what I love about this idea, I call it the Adam Smith invisible hand bitch slap economic theory, is that the ANCAPs are happy and the Austrian econs, because they end up with the free markets, the beautiful form of private capital, which they're all defending, Dunbar number stuff. And then the soy drinking lefty types are happy because they end up with these like large scale commons, co-ops. So it's like everyone's happy. So it's like the ultimate like utopia. But actually,
it's utopia.
It is. But can you see it? I could see that in the future being a thing. So it's like, to think that, and I think I arrived at that journey by being put in an environment where before then I'm like, oh yeah, fuck capitalism, I hate it. And then when I'm in that environment, I'm like, well, I have to listen to these, Austrian econ types now. And I have to think about what they're defending and then see it through their eyes. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, actually there is a synthesis here. And it's good.
We had Alan Farrington the other day, and we made a show that I think the title was "Bitcoin is Real Capitalism."
Yeah.
And he was basically saying what we live in right now isn't real capitalism. It's not. I mean, it's cronyism, and you can't have real capitalism with fiat money. So it's impossible. And I thought that was it's a really interesting point, and it's something I've been trying to get across to when I talk to people who don't understand Bitcoin at all. It's like, it's not magic internet money. It's not just a scam. Actually, what it is it's fair money, which allows you to create a fair economy, with a kind of free market within it, that allows you to protect your wealth. And I was like, when Alan said that, it's kind of, I've started looking at capitalism itself and thinking, actually, no, this isn't fair. This what the world we're living in right now, where houses have become assets. Yeah. That's a bastardization of fiat. When my son can't get on the housing ladder, and he's got a job, it's a fairly well paid job. That's a bastardization of capitalism. And so again, the reason to try and get out there and communicate this to as many people as possible becomes important, but then it goes back to the rabbit hole where the fuck do you start? Where do you start?
I like Bitcoin as I kind of like the John Nash stuff with the ideal money thing, where Bitcoin like strong arms ideal money into being, like the existence of Bitcoin. So I think that we'll always have soft currencies. And again, it's a hard thing to think about as a Bitcoiner, but it's like hard money bad, soft money bad, hard money good. And I think the reality is they're just technologies. And actually, if you look at 2008, the reason Iceland wiggled their way out of the financial crisis was because they could just print more money. Whereas Greece couldn't. And then you could argue that if we were on some gold standard or some Bitcoin standard, then you would end up having more efficient markets because you would have boom bust, and over time capital becomes more resistant to boom and bust. But the reality of greed is that people grab what they can when they want, when they can. And historically, you have seen with large capital markets that they do have a boom bust cycle. So the whole concept of soft currency and the ability to be able to print currency was, you take the money from the good times and then you recycle it into the economy in the bad times, and you try and buffer out that cycle. So the factory has existed for 20 years, but then has a bit of a bad season. Then the economy goes bad, and suddenly they have to let everybody go, and all that stuff they'd accumulated over time is just utterly burnt. To try and avoid that happening. Now, the problem is obviously with soft currencies is a centralized issue that the people who have control over money printing, they generally are going to try and enrich themselves. But I don't think that necessarily that ability to be able to create fiscal stimulus is a bad thing if it's done in such a way where it's federated, or it's harder to kind of turn the money printer on. I don't think it's going to go away. You're not going to get rid of soft currencies, but I do think that the existence of Bitcoin is, because it's just an opt-out, isn't it? It's like you don't have to just have your money in British pounds. You can go use Bitcoin, the free and open source money.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends. If you get to a point where everybody knows and understands Bitcoin to the extent and has free access to it, why would you ever want a soft currency? What benefit is there to a soft currency?
So in the short term, most people are in this planet are in subsistence wages, and they're a paycheck away from being homeless, or a couple of paychecks away from being homeless, and they just can't have the volatility of Bitcoin when it comes to medium of exchange.
Yeah, I'm thinking decades away.
Yeah, totally.
Where
I agree.
Where the volatility's down, where it's ubiquitous, anyone can access it, use it. It's the time when you walk into a shop and everything's priced in Bitcoin.
That's where we'll end up, definitely. But I feel like medium term, it's like chicken and egg.
Oh, medium, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that in order for it to become less volatile to the point where you can just use it as day-to-day money, people probably need to start using it as money. But they're not going to use it as money if it's volatile. So then what's going to exist to bridge the gap? And I would love, particularly if it's like nations which are wiggling out of a USD hegemony or whatever, or being controlled by other currencies, like I would love El Salvador to use something like Fedi to create an El Salvador dollar, and then peg it to like the USD, euro, and then maybe the price of coffee. So you're pegging it to a couple of assets, which makes it really super stable. If you get the technology nailed down, federate it in such a way that's really hard to corrupt. But if everybody agrees, like maybe it's half private industry, half local government, if everyone agrees in the federation to create some fiscal stimulus, they can create some fiscal stimulus and create some growth in El Salvador. I think that'd be just cool to see some of these countries like building a recipe for that, because what you'll end up with a bunch of people using the El Salvador currency because it's the El Salvador dollar because it's stable and outside of USD hegemony, and it's something which the IMF can't control because it's like corruption resistant from forces within and then forces without as well. And then as a liberation thing, it's like I think we spoke about this before, like Wales. If we have free Wales from Britain and then Wales becomes its own nation, the big question is what currency we're going to use. Are we going to use the Bank of England's currency, or are we going to create our own currency, the Welsh pound? And it's like, what would the Welsh pound look like? Would it just be some Bitcoin-backed currency, or would it just be? Could it be something which is like pegged to the pound and then something else? I think that someone will create this recipe, and then you'll end up with all these soft currencies, and they'll be hard to corrupt if they do it properly. And it just makes sense that you're going to use the Bitcoin stack if you haven't got that tradition of a central bank and that stuff already built into your country and its institutions. Then you look at the free and open source stack which exists, and you can build this stuff on Bitcoin. So I really want, I would love El Salvador to be the first one to have the El Salvador dollar. So, and I think that the people who are in El Salvador who don't want to use Bitcoin because it's volatile and they're using Tether, if in their wallet they had like Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, raw Bitcoin, or they had El Salvador dollar living on Bitcoin, but stable, or they had USD Tether, then I think they would opt for El Salvador dollar just because it would be stable. But then also they have that cultural association. Like we have a cultural association with Bitcoin because we're Bitcoiners, and we forget about like thousands of years of human beings have, for whether it's good or bad, having cultural association with their currency. They see the kings on the currency, or they see the local whatever, and you see local stuff on your currency, on your paper currency. People quite like that. Like when we had the euro in the Eurozone, I'm having a rant, sorry, I'll stop in a second. When we had the euro in the Eurozone, I think something which was really like overlooked was just like people's sense of cultural identity when it comes to their own currency. And I don't necessarily know if that's a bad thing. But anyway, so if you have it's called the El Salvador dollar. El Salvadorians will like it. They'll be proud of it. They'll use it. You just got to get the technology stack right. I think Fedi's really like a Chorman eCash, federated Chorman eCash. Because I'm an eCash skeptic. I don't like eCash on Bitcoin. I think it's bollocks. But I do like eCash for that. Because I just think the problem with eCash is the regulatory issue. But if it's the country which is issuing the eCash, that no longer is an issue. So...
and hopefully the country doesn't rug you as well.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's far less unlikely. So if you've got a dark market of eCash mints, it's quite likely you're going to get rugged. But if you have mints which are federated and they're like part industry, part government, and it operates like within the country you're in, then it's a lot harder for them to rug you. Because it can be a clear net federation. Like Liquid's a clear net federation. The functionaries, and they put a lot of work into this federation. There's been some millions keeping this federation honest. You can do that legwork if it's in a region where they don't care about the fact that you're running an eCash mint. Whereas you can't do that legwork if you're operating in a region where they do care about that, because it all has to be like, dark market eCash functionaries.
So Bitcoin or Fedi becomes like the Bitcoin CBDC. In some ways,
this is another thing which I hate. I hate it when you get a Bitcoiner who and I'm probably going to lose some audience of your audience right now.
That's all right.
But I hate it when you have somebody on a stage saying, Bitcoin great, CBDCs bad. And I'm like, Bitcoin great, yes. CBDCs is just a concept, okay? And it's like, again, it's a spectrum. There will be a country which creates a not so shit CBDC. And if it's built on Bitcoin and it's stable and it gives people stable money and it gives people privacy, like,
man, come on. They're not going to... No, I don't think any government is going to create a CBDC and give you full privacy.
Right, so I would say that the incentive for a country, for you to use their currency might override the incentive for them just to harvest data. If you look at the USD, for example, like what keeps them strong is the fact that there's all this dollar money out there. If everyone's using digital money and they have the choice of using CBDC, USD, where they track all your data, or they have a choice of using some private Chorman and eCash, then people will opt to use the private Chorman and eCash. This is why Chorman himself wrote a paper, eCash 2.0 for the Swiss central bank, central bank, or maybe it was ECB, but these countries which have been tasked with building CBDCs, they are definitely looking at things like eCash, and they are definitely looking at the stuff which is done on Bitcoin.
The humble bee, a keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
Yeah, I'm super skeptical just because I know how much data they already have on us, all our phone calls, all our emails, all our transactions at the moment. Yeah. I don't see the introduction as a CBDC as suddenly the place to go, we're going to give you privacy. I actually think it's worse. I think it's better access to data and easier to switch us off. And I'm 100% reject CBDCs. I've started using.
We just need one country, Peter.
Yeah.
One little back, like Wales. We just need the Welsh. Well, we just need Wales to become free from Britain, and then create its Chaumian eCash, Fedi, CBDC, which is private, stable. People can use it as money and it's built on Bitcoin. One country, and then Gresham's law kicks in, and then other people start following suits. The whole world and its economy is choosing to use the Welsh pound for those properties, and then the other countries get jealous and they start switching their CBDCs. Just one country.
Ooh. Is there a Welsh separatist movement?
No, we have Yes Cymru. There's a big. So yeah, I mean,
non-violent, obviously, being Welsh.
We're fannies, man. We're not going to make the first move. The Scots might. So originally when they had the Scottish referendum to leave Britain, the thing which kept Scotland within Britain was that if they left, then they would also be leaving the Eurozone. So that was the swing vote, was we don't want to leave the Eurozone for the Scots. So if the Scots have another referendum,
I think it's inevitable.
Yeah,
I think it's
good. Devolution of power is good.
I think it's good. I do think it's good.
Although single markets are good, that stuff's good. Yeah, but it's okay to have like countries becoming their own thing.
I just think Scotland and Wales are very different beasts themselves.
We'll just copy them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel there's that kind of like historic bitterness between Welsh and English people. Maybe you say there are, but I've every time I've gone to Wales, I've had an amazing time, and people are just lovely. It's one of the nicest parts of the UK. It's just lovely. It was I think I told you this. After COVID, we were trying to go on holiday. We went on Airbnb and there was nothing because everyone was traveling domestically. All we found was a caravan in Wales. So we went up, me and the kids, we had 3 days in Wales, had a great time. I actually didn't realise how much Welsh is spoken there as well. It kind of blew my mind.
Oh yeah, my kids both go to, my son's he's left school now, but he went to a Welsh school for his entire school life, and my daughter goes to a Welsh school and they speak Welsh to each other all the time. It's a lovely language when it's spoken properly.
Do they teach every lesson?
It's all Welsh. Yeah, everything's Welsh.
Everything's
speak
Welsh.
A word of English, to the point where their brain switches. So I drop my daughter's 7, I drop her off at school. I don't speak any Welsh. I drop her off at school and she turns around to me because her brain switches and she just goes, I say, oh, bye. And then she turns around to me and she goes, I don't know what you're talking. Instead of giving an elf talking to me or something.
Because you don't get that as much in Ireland. Like, obviously, my dad's Irish and we spent a bit of time. Like, the only place I saw was at Isle of Arran. And I know there are people who are trying to ensure it survives. It's one of the big issues up in Northern Ireland is that Irish should be taught. Actually, there's a film that's just coming out. I can't wait to see, called Kneecap, about an Irish-speaking hip-hop band with kind of like Republican ties. It looks amazing. But when I went to Wales, I assumed it was just like
token amount of Welsh.
And it was just, I can't remember where we weren't far from. So we were north of Cardiff. I can't remember exactly where we were, and we went into the pubs, and it was just everything was Welsh, and I was just surprised. I didn't know. Maybe
I mean, the Welsh language. So as a language in isolate, out of all the Celtic languages, it's the one which is closest to what people originally spoke in Celtic Britain.
Okay.
Because what happened was that, all the Celts got pushed into the corners, of course. That's why, you have Scotland and Cornwall, Wales. But the Welsh, we were kind of a bit cuckold to the English, and we never really kicked up too much of a fuss. We'd have a little rebellion, but then we'd be like, oh no, okay, we'll stop now. Whereas the Scots were more badass, and they would fight back, and their culture really got oppressed. Whereas the Welsh Celtic culture didn't get oppressed, which meant that the language could continue to exist without being, beaten out of people. So it's a beautiful language, and so if you look at Tolkien, he was a linguist, and he said that Welsh was the most beautiful language, and that's where Elvish is Welsh, is based on Welsh. So when it's spoken properly, it sounds like Elvish. And there's this great epic called the Mabinogi, which is about it's a collection of oral tradition stories. It's where the Arthurian legends came from. So the beginning of the Mabinogi is King Arthur sat at his court in Caerleon, which is a Welsh town, and a lot of the sort of fantasy fiction world comes out of the concepts from the Mabinogi, because Tolkien took that for the Lord of the Rings and then the Hobbit and then et cetera. But the ancient British culture and is really interesting. Yeah, the first this is fun. So the first written, the first person who was to visit Britain from outside, and the first chronicler who came to Britain was a Greek geographer from Greece. I can't remember the date, but it was something ridiculous, like 2000 BC or something, 1000 BC. And he came to Britain, and he said that the people were really nice. I mean, the fact that you could just rock up on a boat and then come ashore and start chronicling Britain is incredible. You didn't get eaten or killed or whatever. And he said that they all had kind of swirly tattoos, which is actually where the word pick comes from, because it's the people of form, and form is picked. But he said that they were all shaven completely. They were fairly hairless, apart from they had long hair, and then they grew their hair above their top lip. So when he got here, it's just a bunch of prog rockers. Yeah. Just with long hair and moustaches. It's so good.
Oh, man.
I don't know where we got into that. Anyway, but where were we? Let's talk about Bitcoin again.
Back to free speech. We're in interesting times then. That's another thing, spending more time here. I've had a little bit more time to embed myself in what's happening here in the UK. I think we're in interesting times. I feel there is a large divide between the political class now and everyone else. I think we saw that with the riots, which was very sad.
But that's that centralization stuff, isn't it? So when we decentralize things, because it's wealth disparity. You want, without sounding like a commie, you want more of the value which is captured at the very top to be distributed against everyone else. And then by saying that, you sound like a commie, but it's you could try and do it through state, but actually I do think that doing it through, because if you take Twitter...
Just look at the history of almost every revolution comes from a point of wealth disparity.
Yeah.
So, if you have huge wealth disparity, you're going to have a revolution. And
because the incentive is liberty, that's why.
Well, and there is traditional definitions of liberty and what liberty we have and what's granted us by government. But also, even you can have complete freedom and liberty, but feel trapped by the life you're living under. So even if we had a completely free society, if you're broke as fuck and you can't afford to go out or feed your kids, how free do you actually feel? You feel trapped by what you're part of. And I don't think it's commie. I think what it is I think there are socialists out there who they see the right problem and but their solutions are wrong. I think they're seeing the same thing we're seeing, which is a bastardization of capitalism because of fiat currency. Our solution is to have a fair money. Their solution is, some of them is equal outcome, which we know you can't legislate for, because ultimately it just makes everyone poorer.
But this is a good kind of argument. When I have arguments with the Austrian econ people, and I'm like, okay, well, I sort of describe to them like a co-op. And I just say, well, if in a free market, co-ops were to outcompete private capital throughout, and then the whole thing just became loads of co-ops, would that be a bad thing? And it's like, and then I'm like, well, actually, that's a socialist utopia, basically, if you go in with a world full of co-ops.
Bitcoin is quite socialist, though, weirdly.
Free and open source software, copy left. I mean, it's a commons. Anything which is a commons, but there's an element of it that you need to nurture that thing for everybody else. So there is some equal outcome, and it's with libertarianism. So libertarianism first was the libertaire, it was a liberty, equality, fraternity. So there's an acknowledgement that in order to have liberty for people, that you do need an element of equality, but then it's how do you get to that level of equality without laws and regulations and whatever else. And I do think the things we're building, the Nostr, Bitcoin, they're commons and they're digital commons, and it paves the way for like big co-ops or big commons, which everyone can act freely within, and definitely private capital can act, just like free and open source software. Like you can take free and open source software and you can sell it and you can run a business on top of it and be powered by it. And look at all the web hosting solutions which are running Linux web servers. Like everyone can access that resource and use it. But if you try and like co-opt it, so if someone came along and they tried to like co-opt Linux web servers and turn it into some private company, then there would be kickback from it. So no, I think it's...
Well, they've just done it with OpenAI, haven't they? They've just taken it from charity to private company.
Have they?
Yeah, profit. Yeah, I think it's going to... I could be wrong, but I think it's set to net... what's his name? The founder of OpenAI.
Sam Altman.
Yes, yeah. Something like $7.5 billion. I saw it today.
Oh right, yeah. They were going. When they go for a raise for like $100 billion,
something
silly. They even had it was just potty money. But it's the tool. It's the tooling. So like, we just need to have the widespread democracy. We needed the printing press. We need the right tooling so people could share information. Now we have the internet. Access to public key cryptography is really important. So. And it makes sense that Nostr itself came out of Bitcoin because it's a bunch of people who wield the power of public key cryptography and understand it and aren't scared of it, rather than kind of obfuscating it through login systems or whatever. And that really is the revolution, public key cryptography, and it unlocks all these freedom technologies. So people being able to control their data, prove who they are, participate in something, sign stuff. Like that allows. So the problem with something like a co-op or something is the tooling's crap. Like it's hard to build a co-op. It's easier to build private capital. It's easier to have a hierarchical structure, just as it's easier to not have democracy and to have like feudalism or fascism or something. But now people are being empowered with public key cryptography, and then it unlocks that ability. We can have an Nostr. Without that, we couldn't have Nostr, could we? So now people having the access to that tooling allows them to build something like Nostr. And then what else can we build?
Well, Nostr's definitely something I need to have my Bitcoin moment with it now. It's been a 7-8 year journey on Bitcoin now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at with it. I've had most of the conversations I need to have. But I don't want to use the word concerned about social media. It's not that I'm concerned, although I have concerns. It's just become a bit shit.
Yeah, it has become. It's not very good.
So I was a big... free speech is basically messy. It is messy. Itself in that, if you're a free speech absolutist, you have to deal with some pretty difficult topics at times. And Eric Weinstein did an interview recently with Chris Stevenson? Is it Chris Stevenson? Williamson, sorry. He did an interview with him. It was really good. And he said... I'm not a free speech absolutist because we'll always come up against a line which will be difficult. And you can go to the very extremes and just say...
Something gross.
Tell someone to kill someone. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just free speech. I didn't know they would do it. But, so he said, I'm not an absolutist. But, and I think some of what Elon Musk did with Twitter was very cool in that there was certainly some state intervention controlling speech as much as I'm not a fan of or don't dislike. I'm just on the fence with someone like Donald Trump. I don't think you should be censoring the leader of the free world from Twitter.
No.
But also the profit element of Twitter has turned it into a shit show. I mean, it's just not very useful anymore. It used to. I barely see the people I used to follow. I've just got. It's become like TikTok.
Yeah,
doom scrolling videos.
Messy, just like and trying to engage you.
Yes,
sending you horrible tweets.
Well, you see, but it's not actually. It's not just that. It can be, and you can see people like kids shooting themselves in the head and fights, and you get doom scrolled into that. But sometimes I get not even doom scrolled, I get scrolled into football because I have a team, I follow it, and then I'll just been going through goals and greatest goals. There's tweet threads on how to be a better man, how to be more masculine, how to be on your diet. There are inspirational quotes, but it's all it's like front page of Reddit now. It's very similar to that. It's not good quality debate. That's gone. And look, before it could be a little bit shitty, but my feed used to be 90% Bitcoin, just talking about Bitcoin, and that was useful to me. Now it's that's almost died because some video will come up and I'll watch it, and then I'll watch another, and then that's changed my algorithm. And so whenever I complain about this, people are like, just get on Nostr, and I'm fully conscious I need to spend.
Well, I mean, so
time
I was cross-posting. I had to leave Twitter, but because it just became too dark for me. And so anyway, so I'm switching between Nostr and I'm switching between Twitter. And it's funny that people talk about the issues with free speech. You're just going to see loads of gross stuff. My Nostr experience is so much nicer. I've never not seen anything horrible on there.
Is that because it's so early though?
No, it's the relays I'm connected to, and it's Nostr clients essentially just browsers.
I tell you what we should do, because we have a new audience now. We should probably explain what Nostr is. Explain it like I'm five.
Okay, yeah. So it's just a paradigm shift. So traditionally in the internet, we've had very smart servers, dumb clients, which empowers the server admins and the companies and anyone else who's running those servers. Not originally, there was a bit more decentralization, but you had, this is where it ended up. We ended up with these big players and these very powerful servers. Nostr kind of flips it because we have public key crypto, and the data can be secured and signed and verified user side. Then you get smart clients, dumb servers. So it switches the topology round. So when you think about the power dynamic, so the power isn't with the people who are running the server, it's now with the people who are running the clients and the users who are running the clients. So it just switches it round, and then and the way in which it achieves this is through a few technological things. So you have a relay that just relays information. It can do some other functions like store some data or whatever, but generally it just relays data between clients. The clients are connected via these things called WebSockets, which are like bidirectional data tunnels, pipes, where data can travel at the speed of light between the relay and the client, the user's client which they're running. So the user can run that client just locally on their phone or whatever, connect to the relay or a bunch of relays, and then because they got public key crypto, and in public key crypto, you can sign a piece of data and say, I created this piece of data, push it up to the relay. Other people who have your public key, because you sign with your private key, they can subscribe to you via your public key. When they pull down that piece of data you signed, you created, they can very easily verify it did actually come from you and your account, unless your account's been compromised. So
Ben, I'm telling you, 99% of my friends who use Twitter and Facebook have no idea what you just said then.
Okay, so what
is Nostr?
Yeah, okay. So Nostr is just a way of having smart client software, user software, dumb servers, and it achieves censorship.
They won't even know what that means.
Okay, so when you
see, let me tell you what I say.
I use the Twitter analogy is very good, right? Yeah. So people often talk about Twitter as a walled garden, in that it's owned by somebody else. You can go in there and you can enjoy the walled garden of Twitter, but it is really whoever controls Twitter decides, the plants which grow in that garden. If you try and take your data, if you try and take your information out of Twitter, you'll find it very difficult, because that is actually their product. That's their thing which they make money on. So it's a walled garden. Actually, it's a bit of a prison when it comes to your user rights. Nostr switches that. You control your data. You can keep your data. You can back it all up, client side, which means you can take your data and you can move anywhere within the Nostr ecosystem. It's all interoperable. So you can have so we're just talking about Nostr in a social media context because we don't get too confusing too quickly. But it means that you can have a Twitter without Twitter, the company, owning all the Twitter servers. You can have Twitter as a commons anyone can access, anyone can build businesses on. You can build your own client on. So if you're using Twitter, you're using their Twitter client, that's what you're using. And it's very generalized to try and appeal to everybody in one way or another. Say if you want a client which is maybe more football centric, and then just the way in which it looks, feels, like you can have that, but you can tap into all the users which exist on Nostr. So we go back to like with the internet early on, if people remember, you would have like the forums, you go on forums, and like people with shared interests would often hang out together, and they you can have that on Nostr. You can have people who have like a preferred like user experience which they're accessing Nostr through. But because we have this system called NIPS, which is Nostr Improvement Possibilities, as long as as long as your client you make for football enthusiasts has like certain NIPS in, then people who are using other clients can also access that data. So I'm using a client called Amethyst, which is very good on Android. I can write a note, post a note. It's just like Twitter. Post it as a note, a tweet. We could call it a note. And you could be using another client like Damus or Primal or Peter's football client, whatever. And you can pull that data down, verify it's mine, and then you can have you can have that social media experience on a different client. So you end up with this. What we have in Bitcoin, which makes Bitcoin very powerful and strong, is permissionless development environment. I can go and build my own ATM, my own point of sale, accountancy software, whatever. I don't need to ask anyone's permission. I don't need to plug into any like corporate APIs or anything. Build whatever I want. Same thing is this for Nostr. Anyone can build whatever they want. So we have this huge amount of developers who are like, wow, I can make a client and I can tap into, currently we're like 500,000 active users. I can tap into 500,000 active users.
Wow.
We're about 400. So Brazil. So this is really important. Before the internet and the platforms we were using, they would pretend to be free. They would pretend to not be censored. They pretend, and Twitter, I know they did the stuff with Trump, but before that, they made a lot of effort to seem very politically neutral. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk doesn't do that. He doesn't care. Nope. He'll push his own tweets. He'll push his own political agenda. You don't know how he's controlling the data which you're getting access to. And it's very powerful. So like, if you look at the Arab Spring, if you look at, the rise of Trump, like you can, if with social media, it can change regimes. So countries are very scared of this.
Yeah.
So Brazil have banned Twitter. Now, I'm not for banning platforms and banning software, but I can see why they did it, because they're aware that this thing could interfere with their democratic process. Just because Elon Musk doesn't like whoever, within the country.
Well,
the reason
interfere is an interesting word because
push whoever he wants in, or his political agenda.
Yeah, it could, but any social media platform can do that in any country at any time.
Yeah, totally.
Newspapers should have a free press, and newspapers should be able to, push certain content types. Everyone influences politics. You and I, there could be an election next year, and you and I can have a conversation. I could try and influence you.
Totally.
That's just the nature of politics.
Yeah.
I think interfere is. I don't know. It's interesting.
You can push an agenda, but you don't know what the algorithm's doing. You don't know how the algorithm works, and that is an issue in itself. In a free society, using this platform for free speech, you need to know how the algorithm works. You need to have control, your own control over how the algorithm works. So in Nostr, so it's like I don't agree with countries banning or locking something like Twitter out, but there's part of me which is like, well, at least now a solution which will rise, which is actually free, where you can actually express yourself without a company deciding who gets access to the stuff you're putting out there, or the country or the state in which that company resides in, and their political, whatever. And so I see all these countries, all these platforms, those big legacy platforms, they're going to fall like cards because you have something like Nostr. So when Brazil banned Twitter, you've got this thing called Nostr. So famously, Jack Dorsey, when he left Twitter and Elon Musk sacked half of his mates, he then looked over the landscape of decentralized Twitter alternatives. He found Nostr. Hats off to him at that time. It was really quite shit and a lot of the clients didn't work. He came in, he realized it was very powerful and decided to back the protocol and help it grow as a protocol and help these clients grow as well. But that's a real example of how informed he is as a technologist, because you really had to look at it as a developer to understand its value proposition, because it really wasn't a good experience at the time. Anyway, so he did that with Nostr and supported the Nostr ecosystem into developing and growing, because he understands whatever comes next after Twitter, like Twitter isn't the end of history, whatever comes next after Twitter, it has to be censorship resistant. It has to be something which countries can't ban and they can't block. It has to be something which has free speech in it, that doesn't have algorithms which capture you, that you have control over your data. It's that inevitable, lean towards greater liberty for people, this is the platform which is going to replace Twitter. So anyway, so when Brazil banned Twitter, we had like a 25% uptick in Nostr users, of course. It makes sense. I mean, this is like, so I'm very bullish on Nostr because I think that Brazil's just the beginning, unless Elon Musk really reins it in, which I don't think he will. Then, I mean, all these countries have issues with Twitter, Facebook, Telegram. Telegram's got 1 billion users. And like most people are on Telegram. Myself, I live on Telegram. All my groups are on Telegram.
Bro, I'm hearing things about Telegram that are very concerning.
Yeah, there always has been concerning things. There's no privacy. It's like the people who control Telegram and what they do with the data is very fishy.
Yeah.
There's 1 billion users there who use Telegram, love Telegram, like myself, for its experience, the user experience, not for all the stuff which is actually happening with the data. We would happily switch and move to something else if an alternative existed and it was just basically the same, like Telegram clone, but had all the things. And so anyway, so within Nostr, Jeff G is a great developer, a great contributor to the Nostr ecosystem. He's building a Telegram alternative. It's literally looks like a clone of Telegram, except it's using this encryption called MLS, which is greater encryption than Signal. So you could end up with a Telegram, which is censorship resistant, private. You can run it yourself. You can send the data through these relays. You can't take it down in any country. If there's easy export tools for exporting groups, I will like take my whole 2,000 member LM-Bits group and I will put it on that new platform. So what we see is like, it's amazing. It's like Bitcoin. The timing of it's amazing with Nostr in that like we're having, these countries banning Twitter. We're having these more awareness of the problems with Telegram.
I don't think it's great time. I just think this is how free markets work. Nostr is a response to censorship on the internet.
Centralization.
Yeah. And centralization.
Of resources.
And if that hadn't happened, like to sit down and invent and create Nostr, there had to be a need. So it's it isn't a luck of the timing. I do find that 25% from Brazil quite interesting. It's totally analogous to Bitcoin because I miss local Bitcoins, but local Bitcoins used to have these charts which would show you when there was a spike in a certain country. It was always fascinating because it would always be something like, I don't know, inflation hits 95% in Turkey, bosh. Massive increase in activity for Bitcoin in Turkey. So I think what you're creating here is essentially the feels like almost like a censorship resistant part of the internet.
Yeah, no, it's an important part of the internet. This is it. This is a good way of looking at it. So like, if you talk about Nostr, a lot of people, they kind of they get locked into this idea of replacing social media because that's been one of its first use cases and what we can do with it. But it's just a different topology. It's just smart clients, dumb servers.
I had it I was on Dogma for a long time. And I'm not sure if Dogma had a desktop client. I'm pretty sure it didn't. And somebody was like, "I'll just use Primal." I think Danny. And so I took my NPub.
Yeah.
What's an NPub, Pete?
NSEC. It'd be an NSEC. When you
is it the NSEC?
The private one. You'd have to log into
the
Primal.
Yeah. Sorry, NPub's your pipe. So I took my NSEC and I put it into Primal, and everything was still there.
Yeah.
Or all the people I'm following, who was following me. All my messages. I don't understand how, but it just the fact that it did. And I think that's one of the things that's interesting trying to get across to people because it's definitely a nerd tool at the moment. It's a niche tool, but trying to explain to people there'll come a time where you won't want to be using Twitter or Facebook. You will want another tool which you control. It's probably part of that. I wonder if it's like if Bitcoin's going to be the gateway to Nostr or it's going to be the other way around. I
think it'd be the other way around. I mean, because you can quite quickly explain the value proposition of Nostr and people are like, oh, that sounds cool, I'll go on it. And they go on it and it says Bitcoin is talking Bitcoin shit and they've very quickly kind of shut off. So, I mean, I did that in the Oslo Freedom Forum. I was showing these activists Nostr and they're like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need, in zone parts of the world where internet gets censored. And they're doing activism. But then they went on there and they instantly saw Bitcoin is talking Bitcoin shit. I mean, they're very nice Bitcoin is talking very nice Bitcoin shit, but still they're like, this isn't my thing. This is the group of people I'm interested in.
They need to create their own subcultures, isn't there?
I think it's like clients. So currently a lot of the clients, like Primal, for example, when you go on there, the recommended follows are a bunch of Bitcoiners. And I can maybe see why, because like the majority of users are currently Bitcoiners. But what I would like to see with clients, and Rabble, who's doing making their own client, Nostr.social, they're having more of that experience. Like, because Rabble built Twitter. He's the guy who built Twitter. He's an amazing guy. And So he's building a Nostr client where that onboarding experience is what are your interests, and then perhaps it connects to relays and tries to like push certain people into using certain relays, so then they're more likely to bump shoulders with each other, or like it looks through notes for tags or something, and then tries to present you with that data. But the first point is you have like a freedom of choice when it comes to, so you need freedom of association, freedom of movement to have free speech. And you get that with Nostr because you can just use whatever client you want. So if your client's acting fishy and it's like, it feels like he's pushing you in one way or another, then the relays you're connected to, then you can connect to different relays, you can use a different client. So they're disincentivized to that because I'll lose users. But it may not be a bad thing. Like I'll connect to vanilla relays which filter horrible stuff and ban, npubs which post horrible things. I don't want to see horrible things.
Actually, so explain relays, the job of relays.
So it's kind of evolved over time. Originally, relays were going to be very, very dumb, and they would just literally like hand data from one person to another. But then it was like, for convenience, it's kind of useful if relays sort of store some data. It's interesting though, because then it's what's the incentive for them to install that data. So like partly why you're fed adverts on something like Twitter or Facebook is because they have these big servers and they need to somehow store the data which you want to stay on the service forever. But then it's kind of weird because it creates a weird dynamic with like free speech in that you're now a journalist and what you produce exists forever. So with Nostr, with relays, they're looking at different models, but like it could be like a pay-as-you-go data thing. So you just pay a relay to store data for you indefinitely. Or for me, what I would like, again, this is the great thing about having a permissionless development environment. I would like a Nostr client where most of my posts, I'll post something, it's relatively, current, recent thoughts or whatever, and I'm just going to chuck it up to a relay, and maybe if it exists for a couple of weeks, a month, that's cool, and if it goes away, whatever. Sometimes I want something to be stored, for a decent chunk of time, forever, so I can, you've had an idea, you think, like me and the Adam Smith invisible bitch slap. I've got the idea, and I'm like, okay, I want to timestamp this thing. I've come up with something cool. It might be that I pay like a tiny amount, like a few Satoshis, and then that goes to one of the relays, and then I'm connected to a relay where they have like, there's a good company behind it, and then they'll store that data, and they can have like a profit, thing where they store the data indefinitely. Or maybe they even like hash it into the Bitcoin blockchain. I don't know, whatever. Like it's stored for a long period. I want that to exist as a function. So you have this you have freedom of movement association, so use whatever client you want, but then you also have within clients, Primal are doing really good work on this, the ability to maybe like tweak your own algorithm. So your global feed, which you just get, and it's friends of friends of friends. And then maybe you're like, well, I'm getting a bit locked into a bit of a, an echo chamber here, just seeing posts from friends of friends of friends, or people, followers of followers of followers. So maybe those degrees of separation, I'm going to expand it out to like 4 degrees, or maybe I'm going to bring it into 2 degrees because I want to be in an echo chamber. Or maybe I'm going to like filter out these particular tag words, which I don't want to say anything on. So you then end up with, you're empowering users with the tools to curate their own information, which they have access to. And then, this is what the Primal guys think, that maybe, maybe you come up with a really cool algorithm, because algorithms are quite complicated. And maybe you come up with it, because now we have this permissionless development environment for algorithms. Maybe Peter comes up with a great algorithm, really great user experience, and you pass it to a few friends, they love it. Maybe you could even sell that as an algorithm. Maybe you could sell that, that tool, that script or whatever. I'm not sure I think it's probably more likely to be shared for free, but it's just as much Bitcoin took the dirty word of money and purified it, and created, pure money. Nostr is taking some of these dirty concepts, such as algorithms. When we think of that word, we're like, ooh, algorithms. And it's like, no, it's actually a tool which you can use to empower yourself, and is very useful. We just need to have user control. And how do we have user control? Public key cryptography. Yeah,
not all algorithms are bad. Like I say, I miss the days of Twitter. I'd go in and 90% of my feed was the people I follow.
Yeah, totally.
And they were talking about things I was interested in, but it was highlighting to me the most interesting posts. That's all I wanted.
Yeah, simple.
Now, I certainly feel like an agenda is being pushed to me.
Yeah.
Whether that is on purpose by the algorithm because the algorithm has become political, or it's just because I've either purposefully or accidentally engaged with some content. But I don't like it.
No.
It feels dirty.
Dark.
And I don't like the influence it's having largely on society. Look, and I know every tool has good and bad. AI, we can talk about the good and the bad. Twitter, social media, we can talk about the good and bad. But there's just very good evidence out there that social media is very, very bad for young girls. It's not good for mental health. Free choice, everyone should do as they choose. But let's at least understand this. And if somebody is having a corrosive impact on your life or society, just be aware of that. Just because I'm becoming, just annoyed with it, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's dark. You don't want to go on this thing and then just be showing all this dark stuff, which you do on Twitter now.
Yeah.
And like, there's an article in the Guardian by Stephen Fry, and he was talking about sort of the noxious fumes that social media like Facebook and Elon Musk's Twitter produces in our atmosphere, and how we're all breathing it in, our kids are breathing it in, and how bad it is for us and our state, our well-being. And I was like, wow, because he was like a prolific tweeter back in the day. So I went and looked for his profile, and he jumped ship, pretty much when Elon Musk took over, and then he started leaning in a certain direction. Then Stephen Fry wasn't happy with it, and he jumped ship. And there's just all these like big player users of Twitter who aren't going to be happy, when they're going on there and they see that this thing's become so dark. Like, the BBC aren't going to be, whatever. They're not going to happily post as their day-to-day thing, and they post on, which essentially kind of feels like 4chan.
Yeah, it's become like 4chan.
So they're going to leave and they're going to look for an alternative. And it's amazing. The Nostr experience it's nice.
Yeah. So do algorithms exist at all on Nostr?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, but currently they're kind of, it's like client by client basis or relay basis or whatever. Like there's little tweaks, whereas the work's being done now to make that stuff, bring it out into the open, and then make users decide, how they tweak their global feeds.
And what stops the horrible content that, not the stuff where, somebody on Twitter might want to watch fights or might want to watch people shooting themselves in the head. Fuck knows why, but maybe they will. That some of it can come down to taste, but then there's the stuff that's illegal and gross that you don't want on there. Can relays block that? What stops someone just posting a bunch of child abuse on there?
So the best way to think of Nostr clients is they're just browsers. So in your browser, you can have whatever experience you want in Chrome or Firefox. You can go wherever you want to go on the internet. You can connect to any server you want to connect to. If you choose to connect to horrible servers, then law enforcement or whatever else is going to have to deal with you in the ways in which they do.
But how do you know?
Well, so it's the relays which are going to get packaged. So if I've got a client and I'm in if I've got a client on the App Store, and then when you open that client for the first time, you're connected to like a bunch of relays. It just comes packaged with stable relays which filter and don't give you, because they want whoever's using your client. If you built a client, you've got users coming to it. You don't want them to have a horrible experience, do you?
No.
So they come packaged with fairly well filtered relays, or connected to fairly well filtered relays. Now you can choose if you want to go and connect to some horrible relays, just as you can choose to go and cruise some horrible websites. But it's not something which is pushed by so you're very unlikely to come across that stuff if you don't look for it, just like the internet in general.
So but those relays will expose you to new accounts which may...
Yeah, they got some very good policies on these relays. Some of them like implemented some AI for like sifting through some public notes and things.
But that's new accounts. So one issue I have is across all social media is fake. People create fake accounts.
Yeah, sock puppets.
Yeah, regular, and they go in waves.
Yeah,
and I'll have a period of about 3 weeks where a bunch of people will message me and go, "Is this your real account?" I'll look, and it'll be McCormack, but the O is a 0, or there's an extra underscore, and I'm like, no, it's not me. To the point now, this is hilarious. My Instagram literally says, "I will not DM you," and something about clone accounts. The clone accounts will clone that and message them, and they'll still message me. But it happens on Facebook. It hasn't happened on LinkedIn, weirdly. But there are fake Pete McCormacks on Nostr. And what they're doing is they're replying to posts. Yeah. So they'll find a post I've made, someone will post, and they'll engage with them and tell them, they'll give them an action to do. Yeah, DM me or do this. How do we stop that? Is that a more tricky area? Because that, if there was a lot of that, it could ruin the experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's kind of infinite scope to stop that. So maybe there's a relay and it verifies people. And then you connect to that relay, and then you have something which verifies that you're you. So when someone, it's like, this isn't Peter, be warned, this isn't Peter McCormack. Maybe you use AI to help out to see if this account's real or not real. Maybe it's on, so the thing I gave you last week was the NIP5 identifier. So, you got peter@nostr.com. And if you connect that to your public key, then you'll get, like a little verification that, you are peter@nostr.com. When people go, so other accounts will fake it and they'll put peter@nostr.com, but they'll have a little red cross saying, this isn't being, his public key, this public key isn't actually connected to peter@nostr.com.
So some ways it's better than the fake Instagram and...
Yeah, in a way. So it depends. It's what people know, isn't it? So like, I'm in favor. I mean, so there's a few things which are being built. There's this thing called Web of Trust. I'm a little bit more skeptical about, because I just don't think there's enough examples of it working out there in the wild. But there's some tooling called Web of Trust, which is going to help like your friends or people you might know not stumble across fake Peters. If it's implemented. A suggestion I had, I've wanted this forever, is you just have like I call it a Sentinel identicon. So basically it takes your public key and then it creates like a little space invader, which can be different colors, like almost like a crypto key. Like it takes that randomness of your public key, creates this little thing, and then just puts it next to your profile. And as a visual identifier, if I'm like, oh, Peter's, asked me to DM, and I go on there and I see you've got a little pink space invader, and I'm like, I'm sure Peter had a little green space invader. There's something which just visual. I'm a very visual person, which looks different to me.
Well, that's like the early internet. You wouldn't use a website and buy online if it didn't have the padlock.
Yeah,
padlock was essential in early internet.
Yeah, so there's some visual thing. I would like a visual. I mean, I proposed that, no one really liked it, but I like it. So there's the permissionless development environment. There are problems which will get solved. Like there's solutions to help solve those problems. If there's something which verifies that you're you, some Oracle service, whatever, and it could be a relay, then all the relays are then, okay, well, if there's another peter@nostr.com, then and it's got, we can't connect to the public key, which is on this verified thing, then we're just going to ignore it. We're just going to filter it out completely. So it becomes, so there we are. So we have, nostr.com, we're offering some for-profit services on there. One of them being you can buy these, these NIP5s. We become private capital operating within the Nostr Commons. If we try to, we're in a position with Nostr.com where we get a lot of traffic because, indexes are still pretty dumb, and they see a .com and they're like, oh, that's a thing. And they'll just go over there. So we have a lot of responsibility that we don't impact the Nostr ecosystem in a negative way. But if we do, we get the invisible hand Adam Smith, the Adam Smith invisible hand bitch slap, just like Bitcoin.com, So like, there's this drive, this incentive not to be, but we can offer that useful service of having these NIP5s and running like a professional private service for that. You could do it yourself. So what's cool about that service, by the way, is everything we build, we're using LMBits. This is our project which we work on, and we have an extension in there, which is the NIP5 extension. And with that extension, if you've got petermccormack.com and you're running LMBits on there, you can enable the NIP5 extension, and then you can sell NIP5s on petermccormack.com to people. So by us creating that product on nostr.com, it means that we've done loads of work on that extension to make it production ready, and everyone else can benefit from it. So everyone else can just go get that extension, run the exact same service we're running from nostr.com. So you end up with this like healthy relationship between the private profit interest, private capital stuff, and then also the free and open source software, in that it's feeding. You've seen this happen with software companies over time anyway. Like they try and feed as much back as possible into free and open source communities and free and open source software, because then, they end up with people contributing for free, contributing in their own time, building this thing, which if they're then building their business on top of, is very valuable. So that was a great example of us being able to offer a product which then feeds back development time into this free and open source thing, which anyone can run. But if people are lazy and don't want to run it, then they can just use, nostr.com for it.
It's very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin. Oh,
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with Casa.
How resistant is Nostr to state attacks? Like, what are the attack vectors? Could, I think as Andreas Antonopoulos said, that they will come after things like with Bitcoin, that they will come after the on-ramps and the off-ramps. They can't control Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Could they come after relays? Is that something that could be?
They could go after relays, but it's just a futile fight. So
Okay.
if they go after relays, it'll be like whack-a-mole in that it's the whole point of it. You get censorship resistance by resilience. It's easy to spin up. So we have a Nostr extension for spinning up a relay, and it's like one click. Like click, click, now you have a relay. And people can use that relay, and you can offer services on that relay if you want to, charge for data storage, whatever. Hopefully they'll realize how futile the fight is. And hopefully they'll realize that actually this thing kind of solves the problem of something like Twitter. They can of course, go after like evil relays, which are just, bad people are using for bad things. But I think as a fight, like there's no point going after the clients because they're just browsers. There's no data in there. It's just a thing you can view the data through. So there's really no point in going after that. It'd be, again, futile. And there's no real legal justification. On the relay side...
I mean, in Brazil, they tried it slightly differently, didn't they? Didn't they say you would be fined if you use a VPN?
Yeah.
Was it like $9,000 or something?
Yeah.
Which is fucking insane.
I mean, that is a private service which you're using to allow and get some privacy. And there's not that many so it's not that easy to spin up your own VPN service. It's infinitely easier to spin up your own relay service. So I suppose a weak point would be the relays and attacking those. But even in a country which has horrendous free speech tradition of horrendous free speech like North Korea or something, you could still spin up relays. If they were blocking relays, you could spin them up twice as fast. It's a lot harder to block a relay and to take down a relay than it is for someone else to spin up a relay. So that's how you get censorship resistance, is through resilience. But on the client side, like there'll be no justification. You just have to be an asshole country if you're trying to ban clients and people's access to clients.
There's a lot of asshole countries.
There are,
man.
but even then, because it's client software, you can run this thing offline. You can have it as a progressive web app. Like there's a gazillion ways in which you can actually access Nostr via a client. It doesn't have to be an app in an app store, which can be targeted and taken down. It's a bit like Pirate Bay, that continues to exist because it's resilient and everyone can just spin up Pirate Bay.
Yeah, I love that.
Piper of social media and sharing data.
The only thing is with these tools have always been a little bit niche. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So even to some extent, for a long time, Bitcoin was very niche, just because of there's a whole new kind of a whole new thing, a whole new kind of user experience that you have to learn.
Yeah, totally.
In that you are in control of your data rather than, say, Twitter, and that's a big thing to get your head around, because every website you create an account, they own the data. You owning the data is a new experience. And then there's the UX of the apps. And look, Bitcoin went through this. I mean, I didn't use it back when it was command line interface. I did play with first time I played with Monero was using the command line interface,
nice.
Which was interesting. Yeah, I mean, with a printed list of instructions.
Yeah.
But it, again, was interesting. And then obviously Bitcoin's been going through its it's interesting journey of the last 15, 16 years, but you've now got things like Strike that make it really easy to use. Like if you want multi-sig Casa, it's really easy to use. It's getting a lot easier because of the user experience. Nostr will need that. The apps will need to make the user experience a lot better.
Totally. I mean, so like I'm amazed, considering it's a bunch of computer scientists, enthusiasts, developers building clients. I'm amazed at how good they are now. But totally, like they could all do with some work for being a little bit more easier for users to engage with. I think Jack Dorsey, the other day, he was on Nostr and he was just thinking about making his own client because he said that all the clients are a little bit too complicated still or something. But there's a large part of it which comes down to like just general digital literacy. Like people wrapping their head around internet stuff was impossible to begin with. Like what's a website? What is email? All that stuff. And then over time they learned it. People naively have thought that other humans won't understand public key cryptography. It's really not that complicated. You've got your private key, you keep it safe, you keep it private. You've got your public key, it's public. And
it's still a lot for people.
It's a lot for people, but I mean, like usernames and passwords are a lot for people. I tell you what's worse is captchas you can't complete. It's passwords you can't remember. Public key crypto solves those problems.
There's a captcha at the moment where it's like a car in a maze, and you've got to tap at the end where the car's meant to finish. And I swear I'm tapping on that line at the end and it doesn't work.
Oh, I know, I'm a captcha dumbass. It takes me like 3-4 goes to get through these captchas. And I'm thinking, what about, the little old granny who's trying to get through a captcha to do online?
It's a whack-a-mole. I mean, eventually none of those captchas are going to work.
No, because computers get too powerful. But you know what they can't flip in crack is public key crypto. And we have like quantum resistant public key crypto also, which we can move on to. So it solves a lot of those problems of the internet and the way the internet was built, public key crypto in general. So more and more people have used public key crypto through something like Bitcoin or the shitcoins. And so there's more general awareness and literacy for it. And then the tools which are being built. So like in LM-Bits, for example, we built the first Nostr signing device, the NSD. And in that, it's like a hardware wallet. You have a private key on there, you keep it on there, and then you sign the notes via this thing. But we were like, that's for Bitcoin, it may make sense because you're doing a transaction once a month or whatever, once every couple of months. But if you're like posting, you don't want to keep plugging in this little dongle thing into you and you're going to lose it. And so more recently, we've been working on BC Black Coffee. He's the one who's doing all the work really, is the NSEC. It's an NSEC bunker, like a hardware NSEC bunker. So it sounds complicated, but basically you have a hardware device, it has your NSEC on, it's plugged in at home. As long as that thing's plugged in and connected to your internet, you could delegate a key. So you have your Nostr app, you're walking around, you're making notes, you're posting those notes. You haven't got the private key on here, you're signing them with a key. This thing's listening for that public key, pulls it down, signs it with your actual key, pushes it back up. But so it means, it's really interesting. So in Bitcoin, we have public key cryptography, and then we've got to figure out how we can use it like with your multi-sig or hardware wallets or whatever else. Now we have social media, and it's like, well, if we're using public key cryptography in social media, how do we best secure those keys? Maybe it's like Pablo's making these NSEC bunker, which is a server solution, which is a very good server solution, and the hardware version of that is based on. We've made this hardware version which you can run yourself. And then there are some like signing devices, or maybe it's like a card and you use NFC on your phone and you're tapping every time you want to do a thing. What's cool though is it unlocks a new, because you've got the permissionless development environment, it unlocks a new tool in that maybe the CEO of Coca-Cola, before they make a post on Twitter, maybe it should be a multi-sig post. Maybe the president, it should be a multi-sig post. Like maybe there should be a little bit more security.
The SEC.
Yeah, the SEC. Yeah, maybe they should have a few people sit around and say, okay, we really want to send this post out there yet? Before they actually post. So we actually get all that work which has been done on public cryptography, and then it brings it into the social media content. And so throughout this whole conversation, we've just been talking about Nostr in social media context, and we probably shouldn't move on to the other things it can do. But
well, I do have one more question before that. So scaling. Scaling is a huge issue with Bitcoin. It comes up again and again. It's the perennial debate. But what about scaling with Nostr? What challenges does it face?
You've got to make, I really strongly believe that you have to make for-profit companies. So at the moment, OpenSats was talking about supporting some relays to run and pay the server costs. That's not a scalable solution. There are a load of for-profit activities you can do with relays, such as offering a verification service. People might not like it, but maybe a KYC relay, so you can use those keys to log into different exchanges. Paying for data storage, paying for NIP5s or pretty names. There's a whole bunch of services which these relays can offer, and then that revenue can, non-evil services, useful services they can offer, which they can feed into paying to store data for short periods of time, or maybe paying to store data for long periods of time. I don't know what the models are and what they're out there, but so Nostr scales very well in that it just scales kind of linearly with the amount of users which come into it. You could just spin up more relays. When it comes to discovery, like how the data is shared amongst those relays, because currently you need to be connected to a relay for you to get the data from somebody else, which they need to be connected to the same relay. So the data sharing and the gossiping between relays, which might need to exist. But it's just a very good base to work from. There's a lot of infinite opportunity for scaling. And there is an argument as well that if you do end up just having 5 big fat relays in the world and everyone's using those 5 big fat relays, one of them's owned by Elon Musk, the point is that you have freedom of movement association. So even in that environment, you can move somewhere else because the power is client side. You could just, if you don't like his relay and the way he's filtering content or pushing some political ideology or serving you adverts, I don't know, you could just move and connect to a different relay.
Do you feel like we are on a trajectory of everything moving towards decentralization?
Yeah, totally. It's just liberty, man. It's just
liberty.
Like that is the overriding incentive for when you take the collective incentive for every single human being on the planet. They want to have more rights. They want more liberty, and that is just, it's overpowering. Like you have a few forces, like a few people in this world who want everything for themselves. The masses of mankind. But on force, the general population of the planet just wanting great liberty for themselves, you can't fight with that force. And that's why humans historically over time have become freer. And we will continue to become freer. We may have those orphan blocks, but over enough time, we'll become freer and freer.
So that natural integration that we've seen with Bitcoin and Nostr, especially with Zaps, that must be just amazing for you. Did you foresee that at the start?
No, so it's funny because originally Nostr was our little holiday from Telegram. From Bitcoin. So in the Nostr Telegram group, there were people who were Bitcoiners who came in and they were chucked off the Nostr Telegram group because they were talking about Bitcoin too much. Because we didn't want to scare away because we had some very talented developers who weren't Bitcoiners who came into Nostr pretty early on. And we didn't want to scare them away and keep this like a Bitcoin thing. And we understood that the whole world needed access to this tool. So we were very hesitant about there being too much overlap between Bitcoin and Nostr. The problem is Bitcoin is dead good. And Nostr's dead good, and they go together like bread and butter, and it's delicious. So the fact Zaps are wonderful. I mean, I was like one of the last people to enable Zaps because I would have preferred it to kind of be thought out a little bit more. There's that part of the protocol, but it's just so good. Like being able to my partner, she's doing a walk for anaphylaxis campaign. She's got a Nostr profile. She just put a note out there saying she was doing the sponsored walk. And then she got like 70 quid in Zaps from people. That. So like for fundraising, and it's funny because it's, again, something else I was very wrong on is value for value. I was thinking this thing's never going to work. But people, they want to give something. If they read a note or something which is good, then yes, they've got a like, they've got a retweet. But to just have that other option where you can just send a few sats, a little bit of value, then collectively all that comes together and it's worth decent money.
It's nuts. It's weird. I'm not a type person. I give a lot of Bitcoin out, support projects, but I've not got into the whole zapping of articles, but founting just amazes me. Yeah. And if you let me go into my wallet here at the moment now. I've got 1,300,000 sats in there on fountain, but I've already withdrawn 1.5 million. So essentially I've had nearly 3 million sats. What's that? 0.03 Bitcoin?
Yeah.
0.03 Bitcoin.
That's a chunk of change.
Yeah. And I just stick it in my future fund and give it away to people. But sometimes you sit here and watch it. Sats 4, 4, 4, 3, 8, 25, a boost. But it's the same with, if I go to Primal, let's have a look. I mean, some of the articles I've had, here we go. Let's go into, you can go via Zaps, can't you? Right, not many are there. 7,500 on that one. I think it might have been the final show one because there were a couple of that blew my mind. Here we go. 49,000 on post on the final show. 100,000 sats on us announcing the new show.
That's cool.
And again, but if you go through it, it's just constant. I've never actually done.
And I don't think that's a trend which will go away. I don't think it's just people who are excited over this new technology and being able to use this new technology. I think it's something people will just be empowered. Like they just want to. It's just a new way of showing appreciation for some content somebody's created. Oscar from Fountain, who made Fountain, he's done an incredible job Nostrifying Fountain. Because he was obviously it was value for value piece of software for podcasting and things, but more recently he's Nostrified it And I was talking to him about it. He said it's such a slug to integrate, but it's blown his mind how powerful it is integrating your user base into Nostr, because then you get this social element added to your platform. And he's a massive bull now. So his process of integrating it meant that he built tools to help other people integrate it. And the example he gave me when I was talking about it was something like, some of these mobile phone games, which has got millions and millions of users. If they can add a social element to that game, then for them, or those users, the ones who engage with it, they'll be talking about that game within the social network context. And then that will promote the game. So there's this huge incentive for these different platforms to socialize the platforms which people are engaging with, like Fountain. And with that, we just get big chunks of users. So Rabble, he's bought Causes.com, he's buying Causes.com that has 500,000 activists and people on it. And he's in free rights advocates and things. And he's going to onboard all of them to Nostr and integrate Nostr into it. So that brings 500,000 new users. So I think you've got countries banning Twitter, you've got platforms integrating Nostr like Fountain and Causes.com and maybe some of these games and whatever else. And so we'll just end up, it's like this feedback loop of adoption.
Well, I've never zapped, so I'm going to do it now. I'm going to zap you. I've never actually set up, so I've got Activate Wallet.
Oh, nice, man.
Why is it all your details to do wallet?
So, Peter.
Why do you need your details?
Are you on Primal?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got their own way of doing it. So, if you used Peter at Nostr.com, if you'd use that as your NIP5, you can also, I'm doing a bit of a shill now, you can also use that for your LN address. So you could stick that in the LN address thing and it would also work as an edit. So you could have Peter at Nostr.com and then funds would go to it.
Where do you want my data
so that's pretty cool.
Data collection. Come on, let's do this. Let's go all the way to the bottom. I'm going to zap you. All right, next, what do I do here? Does it just connect to a wallet?
Yeah, it depends sometimes. So on Amethyst, it'll open up whatever wallet I've got to default open, and it'll ask if I want to zap.
Here we go.
Send funds.
279. Go right, here we go. Peter, your wallet's been activated. Your new Nostr address is peter@primal.net. Cool. Oh, it wants me to buy sats.
Oh, it's getting you to use their wallet. So Primal is very much on the kind of more for-profit side of it.
That's fair, though. I mean, look, fair enough. Do it.
It's a very good platform and it's a very good piece of software as well. But it's kind of a product, and there's some features in there which they want you to engage with because then it helps them as a company.
But I could just send Bitcoin to it, couldn't I?
You could also just send it. Is it Ben Ark at Nostr.com?
No, I mean I want to deposit some in my wallet.
Oh, right.
So if I go to my, let's try this. Let's go and.
But like in Amethyst, for example, I can. Are you Peter at Primal? Are you on Nostr?
Here we go.
I'm gonna zap you back. There we are.
Let's stick some sats in there.
Oh, there's a good fake you out there. So what's your npub?
Give me 1 second. Right, did that work? Yeah, that's the thing I always love about Lightning. There's just the instant nature of it.
It's incredible, and you didn't have to put any personal details. You did actually put some personal details.
Hold on, there we go. Ben Ark, I'm going to zap you here.
Yeah.
Oh, it just chose. Huh? So I didn't choose how much. I just pressed it and it added 42 sats.
Maybe so. It depends on the client. This is the other part of Nostr. So you can pick the client which works for you. Currently, we have a dozen different clients, a couple of dozen different clients. There's a really good website called Nostr.apps, which has a list of all those clients and tells you what they do. But there will be inevitably a couple of clients which kind of rise to the top, as like with Bitcoin software. There's a few clients using Bitcoin which rise to the top.
There must be some. I don't know. There must be some setting here where I can. Oh, you just had me back. That came in. Oh, did you?
No.
Hold on. If I'm getting Zaps now within Primal, is it going to go to this by default?
It's going to go to, I think they have a wallet built into Primal, and that's probably part of their revenue stream is charging for transaction fees or something. I'm not sure. I don't know. I wouldn't like to speak for them.
Okay, so if I had, previously I'd set up with, what's it called? Damus.
Yeah.
If I was getting the equivalent zapped in there, would this naturally do the same? Like if I start using Primal, is it going to send the sat straight to my wallet of Satoshi?
People will. Yeah, I mean, if you haven't changed your NIPO 5 or whatever, then people still know who you are. They're still subscribed to your public key. You can change your NIPO 5 if they're subscribed to you. You're not going to lose people on that front. You can then receive Zaps.
Right. What is it you said that you wanted? What I need to do? Oh, I don't know. We'll do that another time.
But it's we're currently at that Cambrian explosion moment where everyone's building all these different things, and then a few really easy tools will rise to the top. But then also the platforms where there is some friction, enough users will say, I'd like this to change, I'd like that to change. Can you implement this? Can you implement that? And then they'll adapt and change. And a lot of these are free and open source projects, and they have repos, and they have users putting in issues, feature requests, those sorts of things. So all that stuff gets better over time. I love Amethyst. I use Amethyst. It's by Vitor, and I think he does a great job. Just the UI, the experience, I love it.
But it's only available on Android.
I think it might be only an Android one, yeah. I've used Primal a little bit. What did I use for desktop? So Nostr Apps has a list of great Nostr apps, and it's just finding the one which kind of works for you, I guess. But just by the practices which those software applications implement for development, the communities they build around them, and then also the usefulness and how easy it is to engage with their software, different clients will rise to the top. We'll see different clients rise to the top. They're not all perfect, and you need to have that process sort of play out and happen. But no, it's once you get used to your client, it's great.
What about beyond kind of social media apps? And you alluded to it earlier.
Yeah, so the first time we spoke before Nostr was even a thing, when we had 20 people in a Telegram room, and I was like, "Hey, have you heard of the Nostr?" The idea was for marketplaces. So we were I mean, I'm not going to take full credit. This is obviously Fiat Jeff's idea and protocol, but we both worked on this idea for censorship resistant marketplaces. And again, it was that idea of resilience, the infrastructure part of it, and that had some, influence, in helping the Nostr system grow. The idea. So inevitably, when Nostr was a thing, it was like, what can we do? So I built the first sort of Nostr Twitter clone, which was literally a clone of Twitter, and that brought in a lot of users. You wouldn't run now because it's just it's buggy software. We could probably improve and make it work, but it's buggy software. Then the next thing was to create the marketplace idea, because it's the topology. You don't say, okay, what can we build on Nostr? People are like, why are you going to try and build anything but social media on Nostr? It's like, okay, what can we build with the topology of smart clients, dumb servers? Like,
is anything then?
Where servers are just passing data from one person. So yeah, totally. So you have the Nostr Wallet Connect stuff, which is a lot of people are finding very useful. You can connect to, a funding source over the Nostr network. There's buying and selling stuff. Like I can set up, I could create products, sign those products. It's me who signed those products. You can then buy those products from me. And we can DM each other about shipping and stuff. So there's a Nostr market extension, LM-Bits. UI needs a little bit of work probably, but it works. It's crazy. It works. You can actually see it working if you go to market.nostr.com. We have just the front end client running there. And then you can import the test or the test merchants, and you'll see some like products populating, and it's like an Etsy experience or something. And because it's a NIP 15, did you go to market.nostr.com?
I did.
Oh, there we are. So if is there a button which says import?
Import a list of people, merchants.
Yeah, just click on that. If it's the right one, it should just magically start filling for the products, hopefully.
The first thing.
Yeah, there we are.
Have you seen the skull I'm having carved outside my house?
No, what's that?
So the house I bought had these two Wellingtonia trees. They're huge.
Yeah.
Like, 100 foot tall? Or am I being
Is this the house I
ridiculous?
went to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
the beautiful trees.
Yeah, one of them died.
Yeah.
And so we
Are
had
you going to have that on your lawn?
Well, we had to have it chopped down. No, dude, this stuff's mental, right?
Your neighbours.
So we had to have it chopped down. Yeah. And when they were chopping it down, I was like, can you just leave a bit?
Yeah.
Just leave a bit. I might do something with it. And then I did. And I was like, I'm going to get a skull carved into it. So we're having this done.
Oh, sick. Man.
Yeah, I think it's cool, but it's not. It's kind of unusual for the village. Everyone just has a house and a hedge, and that's it. And so I'm already
controversial
in the village, already not popular with everyone, but it's just old busybody, nosy people.
It's fun though, isn't it? It's like English country village, gossipy. It's good fun.
It's good fun.
Yeah.
But Giant Skull, I got to fucking listen to this. I got a text message this morning.
You're going to be popular on Halloween.
Wow, that's my birthday.
Oh, wow. Halloween's your birthday?
Yeah, I'm White Paper Day.
Wow.
No coincidences, Ben. So I get this text this morning. Peter, Sam Reed at the BBC in the East here. I wanted to ask about a skull that's been spotted carved into a tree stump. I was like, what? I was like, why is this news?
Yeah.
Thanks for reply. It's just like fucking weird. So yeah.
If you're talking to the BBC, please, for the love of God, can you pass on? Because the Nostr story is, I mean, it's legitimate. It's not just because I'm like a Nostr freak.
They will not care.
But the conversation, I think the angle of that topic, that story, is Jack Dorsey leaving Twitter, Elon Musk taking over Twitter, people banning Twitter. That's the interesting part.
Yeah, I get it. So I think the only way you'd get people like the BBC to care is to have them as it's a anti-Elon Musk technology.
Yeah,
it's an escape from that. They'll definitely be interested,
buy
but
into it.
the BBC aren't interested.
Or
in
click
things
or
like
something, some like tech supplement thing.
Possibly. I mean, this is Look East. This is the local news. This is local BBC. But
I mean, I've sent so. I mean, it's centralized. It's just getting the data out there, isn't it? It's getting the word out that Nostr exists. But I've done a lot of legwork trying to get those guys to do a report on something like Nostr. It is popping up more and more in the mainstream media, the Nostr stuff. And that's another thing as well. So it's like, if there were another Trump moment where he gets banned from social media, then Nostr would be talked about as a alternative. I know he made gazillions on truth.com or whatever with that deal. But he could have potentially moved across to Nostr. So
what are these things people are selling here, by the way? They just like NFTs.
So these are stickers and stuff, I guess. I mean, this is just so it's a browser.
Actual real stickers, or
I guess so, like stickers or something. So it's a browser of data. The stuff in the marketplace. Don't do a live demo.
Product editor basket. Let's have a look. Let's go with it.
Let's see.
Proceed to checkout.
The only issue might be now that the merchant isn't online, or they don't have the software running, so because they need
Shipping
to you need to
online?
generate an invoice from somewhere when you pay it. Currently, you're paying it on Bitcoin.
Yeah. Again, this is just all UX stuff. I'm already lost. I don't know what to do.
I mean, it's just like if you go to WooCommerce, you got to put in some details and then pay for something.
So message merchant address. We provide physical address. Let's try this. Let's try it. 5.
I can't believe you're doing this to me.
God, we got to test this shit out, man.
So the way Nostr Market works is that's a dumb front end client. You've connected to a merchant's public key. You've pulled all the products which they've signed into that client, and now you're displaying them. Now we at market.nostr.com, you can maintain a list of merchants. So we maintain a couple of lists of, this is like the test list. We have another list of just vanilla merchants, Bitcoin, people selling stuff, normal stuff. But you could maintain a list of merchants,
So this is going to throw me. NPub, alternate NPub option. Why do I need to put my NPub in?
Well, so it depends whether you want, if you want to use your NPub, then they'll know who you are and you can talk to them. Or you could just get it to generate some keys and then just use those keys for buying and selling stuff.
Let's go the full
Because
experience.
inevitably, if you're using a key pair to prove who you are, buying things, then there's some passive reputation on your history of buying stuff, or your history on social media, or your history of where else. So you could import that reputation into a market client or whatever Nostr client, or you could create new keys and build up that reputation again. Reputation is a huge, important missing piece of the puzzle when it comes to these systems. It may be that it doesn't generate an invoice.
Enter your Nostr private key and generate a new one.
Just generate a new one. Just make some throwaway keys.
Isn't that just feels a bit slightly risky?
Yeah, it is slightly risky. It's all cutting edge stuff, man. This isn't
okay.
Product ready yet.
Place order. Here we go.
Give it a few months when we finish our Allenbit seed round. And,
where's it paying the sats from?
If it generates an invoice, which I'll be surprised if it does, then you will be paying the merchant directly. So
okay.
This would be the probable issue: is the merchant isn't online, which would mean that when you go to generate that invoice, they need to be connected. So they're using the LM-Bits extension for this. So it will generate the invoice and pass the invoice back over Nostr. Then you pay the invoice and then get the product.
So you just need that.
They need to be more like committed to being a Nostr merchant.
Or you just have that for-profit one that creates can take the payment and then distribute it and take a small element.
Could do that as well, yeah, like a Watchtower type service where it just takes the payment sent in a centralized way and then pushes it to the merchant. But I mean, really, it's not hard. If you've got your VPS running with your LM-Bits on, or your server running with your, it's like if you've got your WooCommerce shop, isn't it? So if you have your WooCommerce shop, it has to be online in order for you to accept people to be able to buy stuff from you. Similarly, the merchant should be online for you. So what we really need, I think, probably in Nostr market is to like do a test ping to the merchant. So when we pull the merchants down, it then does some test pings to make sure they're online. Are you online? Yes, 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 no. Because it could be, I think probably what's happened here is the data, the relay stored some of the merchant information, the products, and then it's delivered those to you. And you can't actually make the purchase because the actual merchant's not online, isn't running their server software for generating the invoice. So there's stuff to improve, but it's like,
we're so early.
The very fact that you have like a market AI, a market app, which you can go into and buy something from overnight. So like when Vladstan was one of the LM-Bits developers, he was the one who really led making the Nostr for marketplaces really functional, and also the software too. Amazing developer. But when we were experimenting with it, and like I was running software locally as a customer, he was running software locally as a merchant. Neither of us had software running online, and we're just connecting to these online relays and sending data through it. That was cool. I suppose you're more likely to have people not have their whatever's generating the Lightning invoices or whatever online, but it was cool that neither of us had to be running software like a WooCommerce shop on a server somewhere. It was really accessible and easy. And then if you think about the social media stuff, like there's something very powerful about when you get your social network and then bring selling and buying stuff into like Facebook marketplaces. People love Facebook marketplace. So you take something like that NIP and then you make it interoperable with markets and in social media context. So it could be that, you want to sell something and then you just, take a photo, you list it, and then up it goes. And then it posts on your Nostr client as a Nostr post, and someone's like, oh yeah, I want to buy that thing. And then maybe it routes to like a marketplace client or something, or maybe the social media client you're using has some like marketplace stuff built in. It's just like infinite possibility to build. I think probably one of the issues that Nostr might have is and I've started seeing some clients, they overcomplicate things. They become more complicated. Right. As like with DMs, there's like one DM NIP to begin with. The one I wrote wasn't super private because it leaks some metadata. So there's a bunch of other NIPs now. And then some clients have implemented all those NIPs. So now you go to DM someone, you've got 4 different options for DMs. That's a shitty user experience for the majority of the planet. But yeah, it's fun, man. It's good stuff. But it requires people to find the for-profit stuff they can do on there to make their projects sustainable. OpenSats do a great work supporting a lot of Nostr developers, but I do want a lot of those projects to like become sustainable in their own rights, and I think they can. Of course, they can.
Yeah, eventually.
Damus, for example,
it's critical mass, and how many Bitcoin companies have come and gone.
Oh yeah, totally.
These just endless ones have come and gone. It's going to be the same with this, but it's that symbiotic relationship with Bitcoin is I think is very healthy.
Yeah, it's cool,
and I like the fact that there's kind of been that integration. I mean, I loved what the Mutiny guys did, and it's just so depressing that
it's a shame, isn't it?
Oh, it's such a shame.
I thought that too.
Such a shame.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of integration between the two, the fact that you've now got Zaps coming, like you say, on Fountain, like this kind of integration, I think is healthy for both. So
yeah,
fingers crossed, man.
It could have been with the Mutiny guys. I'm not sure. Maybe it was because I wouldn't want to speculate, but like with LM-Bits, we had Phoenix D and Greenlight are really powerful. So we have Phoenix D as a possible funding source now, like managed self-custodial managed Lightning nodes, and that can kind of be done in the background, like on something like a software as a service or something. But it means that people can kind of access some self-custodial Lightning Bitcoin wallet functionality, and So maybe they just felt that like the waters were becoming too busy. There was too many people in the pond, maybe.
I
building
don't
similar
know.
things.
I mean, I read their thing. I think it can be a combination of things.
Personal stuff. He felt burnt out, didn't
Yeah,
he?
it can be burnt out. Bitcoin burns you out,
Oh,
man.
man, it's a
The
succubus.
travel, the fives,
Yeah.
the arguing, the stress of the prize. I mean, there's that. And I also think there is a little bit of kind of the chilling effect of things like Wasabi and Samurai. Certainly Samurai, fuck that situation. Because you are offering a way for people to kind of transact privately, which we all want and know we deserve. But unfortunately,
Well, Nostr did a lot of good there. So the discovery of the, what do you call them? In Wasabi, so you had the Samurai guys were taken out. And what's interesting is a lot of these platforms were like, yeah, you know, we're censorship resistant, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah, but you haven't actually been targeted. And then when they did get targeted, they're like, okay, you're not a censorship resistant, you need to be. But then there's that quote, isn't it, that censorship on the internet, it sees it as damage and it roots around it. I think it was Hal Finney or one of the cyberpunk guys came up with. But so Wasabi shut down as a service, but then they set up they integrated Nostr for discovering the market maker, the people who actually match the people who want to mix or whatever. And they're using Nostr for that. So again, that goes into that. And now it's like, well, good luck taking it down, you know?
yeah.
So they very quickly adapted with the tools to offer a service which can't be taken down. So that's a good example of using Nostr in a different way. Nostr Market's a good example. Wallet Connect's a good example. We got very excited in Ellen Bits land over IoT because we're hardware dorks and like we want to just turn a light on in our house. I want to turn a light on in my house. When you think of users on Nostr, they don't have to be people. They could be like devices in your house, and you could interact with them and say, you know, what level are my solar panel batteries at? What, you know, how hot is the boiler? And turn this light on, please. And you're literally just DMing devices in your home. Black Coffee works in Alan Bits. He's the one who's been pioneering this, and it's absolutely phenomenal. It's so cool. Like the Nostr app in that environment, you know, it's like an IoT app. And see, what's cool about this is the user experience. You know, you're saying about how users might get put off by the technological hurdles. This is really easy to make it so you don't even know you're using Nostr. So the first thing we want to develop in Alan Bits and sell, probably on the Nostr, in the shop on Nostr.com, it's just like all IoT devices, they have these little microcontrollers and they're connected to the internet. We have libraries for doing Nostr stuff on these microcontrollers. So we can connect to a relay, we can sign data, use public key crypto, all that stuff. So first thing we made was a lamp, and I go turn on lamp, and it just sends, you know, a bool on, and then the light goes boop. And I demoed this in Prague. I also demoed it in Japan as well, a conference there, and it just works.
Can you use it to electrocute people?
So
is this what we're doing in April?
So when I got there, I was like, I wrote the way they did their conference was cool, and it was like a repo, and then you could suggest as an issue, you could suggest a talk. So in my talk, I suggest talking about Nostr IoT and other stuff, you know, the other stuff in Nostr. It's Nostr, so it's notes and other stuff, transmitted by relays. So I was doing the other stuff part, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have a fireball machine, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that. And because I was a little bit drunk when I was filling out the application for the talk, and I didn't do any of the things. So I get to Prague, and I'm like, I haven't got anything to turn on. I mean, I've got an Nostr IoT to show, but if it's just like a little shitty LED, then that's not very inspiring, is it? Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll go buy something. So I went to the local, I'm always doing this when I go to these conferences, I have to go to the local hardware shop or the local supermarket and find something to build on or do a workshop on. And I found this like a strip light thing.
Yep.
230-volt strip light thing, but it had a button, a switch. And I was thinking, oh, there we go. So I can just replace that switch with a little relay, plug it into my little microcontroller, boom, I've got an IoT light. So I did that, and it was all working great. And then when I went to do my talk, the little wire had fallen out of the relay. So I was like, oh, mid-talk, got Jack Dorsey sat here, like, you know, everyone sat there, you know, flipping, terrifying, nerve-wracking moment. So I plug in the relay thing, and then I touch the little solder points on the bottom of the relay. So you've got 230 volts.
Yeah.
The circuit's broken because the relay's off. And then when you turn it on with the Nostr client, you send it on to the relay. The client on the lamp pulls it down. says, oh yeah, on, and then it closes the relay, closes the circuit. What I did is I put my hand under the relay and there's these little solder points, and then I touched it and I completed the circuit.
But got a little shock.
Yeah, so it wasn't a little shock, it was a 230 volt shock. So it was like a pretty, amazingly, like, because I went down, I did it, and then it really flipping.
Did you start it out?
It just went woof like that on my arm. And then sort of stopped here before it got to my heart. And then and then by the time I came back up,
that's why you got to spend some of your Bitcoin. You can fucking kill yourself.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to carry on. But I managed to get away with it. So you don't actually, if you look closely, you might see me judder a little bit, but I didn't show that it. Anyway, after that, it worked then, and I could turn the lamp on. But the other thing we had running as well was the Zap lamp's fun. We'll have to get you one of these. These are really, oh man, for the players, this would be cool. So the Zap lamp, I got it in my office, and it's just a lamp, and every time you get zapped, it goes boop and turns on and turns off. But it's, you're working away, grinding away, you feel like the world hates you. Everyone's asking loads of questions, there's bugs everywhere, blah, blah, blah. And then every now and then the light just goes boop, and I'm like, oh, that's nice, thank you.
A little bit of joy.
Thank you whoever who did that to me.
A little bit of joy.
But you could have it with the players, you could have some stuff turning on and off in the bar of the football club or something, I'm not sure.
Flash up the players.
But Nostr's great for that. So like your guys, to get them Lightning wallets and then do payment splitting and this and that. But if they've just got a Nostr profile, you just say, right, let's go on down on this app, set up a Nostr profile, boom. Okay, here are all your things, these are all your LN addresses, they have their LN, and then when they get zapped, you can just have things listening for those public notes for when they get zapped. And then when they get zapped, you could have things happen, you could count how many zaps they have. So in a game, for example, people could be zapping them. And as they're zapping them, you could have like a tally of who's winning in the zaps or whatever. Chris Moss did something like that for Nottingham for a football game there. It was flipping epic.
They did a similar thing for the baseball guys, Perth Heat.
Really?
Yeah, they were, you could, it wasn't zaps, but it was, you could do send Bitcoin over Lightning to players as they were playing. I think they've pulled it all now. I think that Perth Heat's pulled all their Bitcoin stuff.
That's cool.
It was cool.
Yeah, that's
they
cool.
Pulled it all.
Yeah, so I love that sort of stuff. Anyway, but the Nostr...
Endless opportunities.
But Nostr IoT, BC Black Coffee's doing a lot of work on it now. We have a group, a Nostr IoT Telegram group, trying to get a NIP through. I've got a NIP for it. Fiat Chaff has a NIP for it. BC's kind of pulling those together, making a new NIP. So hopefully we'll get it through. And yeah, the first product we're going to make is just literally a plug socket. And it's a private plug socket, IoT plug socket. That's all it is. You download it, there's a QR code, you scan it, put in your Wi-Fi details, that's it. And now you can, with that IoT piece of client software, you can turn your plug on and off wherever you are. It's cryptographically secure, private, blah, blah, blah. And for the user who's buying that thing, you could put that thing on Amazon, and it's like it's hard to find an IoT solution which doesn't, in the terms and conditions, open up your whole network to snooping. You're buying those tools of surveillance and installing them in your own home, which is crazy. So you could literally just sell this to normal people, and they would buy it and use it. And it's 1 million times easier than the alternatives, which are like you have to run your own server software, reports, do this. Like MQTT, it's a pain in the ass. I'm very excited for that.
Endless possibilities.
Yeah.
Man, anything we've not covered that we should have?
I don't know, man. What we covered, we should have.
Well, don't worry if we haven't. Listen, how long was the training?
It's about 3 hours. Was there something I made note of? I think we covered everything, like Nostr, where Nostr's going, algorithms, how they're evil, like being able to control it. It's all about empowering people, isn't it? And then
liberty.
That's how you get the liberty.
Liberty through decentralization.
Empower them with the tools of liberation.
Well, now we're here. We haven't got many Bitcoin people to talk to. Hopefully, we'll see you a bit more regularly down here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
we're going to have you in Bedford in April, electrocuting people.
Yeah, that'd be
just
good.
Not yourself.
Yeah. I got a bunch of things I need to bring to the club.
Right. Where do people go and check out and learn about Nostr?
So you can go to nostr.org.
Yep.
There's a link to the GitHub repo there, which has all the nips and stuff in. And that's a great thing. Even if you're not technical, you can go there and you can look at how much discussion goes into, the Nostr protocol. Very healthy discussion too. You can also if you go to nostr.com, there's a video on there, and there's some for-profit stuff we're doing. Like people can buy their NIP 5s if they want. But there's a little video actually on there, which is really quite nice. It's just like a 3-minute video, which kind of explains the basics of what Nostr is. And then for the LM Bit stuff, which is our main focus, like for us, Nostr is just like, it's another kind of excuse to work on LM, because everything we do is powered by LM Bits. So it's another excuse to work on LM Bits. LMBits.com, there's a bunch of information on there, data on there about LM Bits, and that should link to a bunch of, the repo and wherever else. And also the shop, we sell some swag in the shop. So yeah, check out those websites. Also Telegram, and it's where we live. Hopefully soon we'll move to a Nostr Telegram, Jeff G's Nostr Telegram when he finishes it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, man. I'm really looking forward to it, because he's the dude who can do it too. He's a very talented dude. UIs look amazing. He actually made the UI for Nostr.com. But what was I going to say? What was I? Oh yeah. Currently we're still on Telegram, so LM Bits on Telegram. We've got a couple of thousand people in there. Really helpful community, beautiful people. They're just helping people debug all day. And the MakerBits Telegram group as well. That's very good for the hardware stuff, for those of you who might be interested in hardware. And then we just try and make as many tutorials and make as much of this stuff as accessible as possible, because, the more people we empower with the tools of liberation, then the more people will be liberated. Inevitably, though, it requires a little bit of everything. More freedom requires a little bit of work, but we just have to reduce that workload down and make it as easy as possible, don't we?
Man, I love it. I'm going to make sure I spend a bit more time on Nostr now these days. And just appreciate everything you're doing.
Same.
Keep doing it. More liberty through decentralization. I love it. Yeah. And thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks for the new podcast. And thanks for being, so obnoxious.
And thank you to everyone for listening. I love you all. See you soon. Bye.